Have you ever wondered if you're truly awake, or just drifting through life inside a dream made of habits, illusions, and thought patterns you've never questioned? What if the reality you believe in is nothing more than a false awakening, keeping you trapped while your real self is still asleep? In this series, I'll reveal powerful psychological techniques to shatter illusions, break mental loops, and unlock true awareness. But before we dive in, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and drop a comment below, not only to support this channel, but to remind yourself that you're ready to wake up and see life in a completely new way. Imaginary mirror technique. The imaginary mirror technique is not just a relaxation exercise. It's a doorway into seeing your own mind from a completely new perspective. Most of the time, we live inside our thoughts. They feel like our reality. A harsh memory feels like it's happening all over again. A worry about tomorrow feels like a danger waiting just around the corner. And the more we try to stop these thoughts, the more they grow stronger. This is why people get trapped in cycles of overthinking, anxiety, and sleeplessness. But here is the secret. If you could learn to step out of your thoughts and simply watch them as though they belonged to someone else, their power over you would dissolve. That is exactly what the imaginary mirror technique teaches you. Think about a mirror. A mirror never argues with its reflection. It doesn't resist, it doesn't criticize, and it doesn't get entangled in what it shows. It simply reflects. Now imagine if you could treat your own thoughts in the same way. Just reflections, not commands, not threats, not absolute truths. When you picture your mind standing before a mirror, you create distance. Instead of being lost in your inner storm, you become the one watching the storm from a calm, safe place. That small shift, from I am my thoughts to I am the observer of my thoughts, is what begins to free you. To practice this, close your eyes and imagine standing in front of a tall, clear mirror. Inside it, you see yourself, but not as you normally do. You see the version of you that's carrying all the stress, the worry, the looping thoughts that won't stop. Maybe your reflection looks tense, with furrowed brows and tight shoulders. Maybe it looks restless, endlessly replaying a memory or imagining a worst-case scenario. At first, it can feel strange to see yourself this way, but something powerful begins to happen. As you observe, you notice details you normally ignore: the way your body tenses, the way your breathing shortens, the way your eyes look tired. And with every moment of observation, you begin to realize, this is just an image, a version of me caught in thought, not the whole of who I am. The power of this visualization comes from something psychologists call cognitive distancing. Normally, when a thought appears, you merge with it. You believe it fully, you feel it deeply. It controls your mood, your body, your behavior. But when you step into the role of the observer, when you place that thought into the mirror, you create space. The thought no longer feels like your identity. It becomes something happening in front of you, not inside of you. And in that space, the grip of anxiety loosens. Imagine Emily, who struggles every night with replaying an argument she had at work. Without the technique, she lies awake for hours, feeling guilty, angry, and restless. But one night, she decides to try the imaginary mirror technique. She closes her eyes and pictures herself standing in front of the mirror. In the reflection, she sees herself exactly as she is when she's trapped in the loop. Anxious, tense, restless. She observes this image quietly, without judgment. Slowly, she sees the reflection's breathing change. Deeper, calmer. She sees the shoulders drop, the face soften, the restless energy fade. And as her reflection changes, Emily feels the shift in her real body too. The argument no longer feels like an endless battle inside her chest. It becomes something small, something fading, something distant. The mirror becomes more than just a reflection. It becomes a teacher. It shows you that thoughts are temporary. They come and go. They only grow strong when you feed them with attention and emotion. But when you step back and simply watch, the thought loses fuel. It runs out of energy. It fades. You learn that you are not your anxiety, not your regret, not your worry. You are the awareness behind it, and awareness is always calm, always steady, always free. Another reason this works so well is that your subconscious mind responds to images more strongly than to words. If you tell yourself, stop worrying, your mind resists. But if you imagine yourself watching your worry fade in the mirror, your subconscious accepts it. The mind believes in pictures, and the mirror gives it a picture of release, of distance, of peace. This is why, with practice, the imaginary mirror technique becomes easier and more effective. Each time you use it, your brain learns a new habit, to detach instead of react. So tonight, when you find yourself restless, don't fight your thoughts. Don't try to push them away. Instead, stand before the imaginary mirror. Watch your thoughts unfold. See them clearly, but from the outside. Allow your reflection to carry the weight of worry, while you simply observe. Slowly, you will notice the reflection changing, softening, calming. And as the reflection relaxes, you will too. Sleep will come not because you forced it, but because you created the space for it to naturally appear. The imaginary mirror technique is a reminder that freedom doesn't come from controlling your thoughts. It comes from stepping back and realizing you were never trapped in them to begin with. You are the observer. You are the one holding the mirror. And in that awareness, peace is always possible. Cognitive loop breaking. Have you ever noticed how your mind sometimes behaves like a broken record? A single thought, a worry, or a memory keeps repeating over and over until it becomes exhausting. This is called a cognitive loop, a cycle where your brain keeps replaying the same pattern, trapping you in worry, guilt, or fear. What makes these loops so frustrating is that they often feel uncontrollable. You don't choose to think the same thought repeatedly, yet it keeps circling back, pulling your energy and focus. The technique known as cognitive loop breaking was created to help you escape this cycle, freeing your mind from the endless repetition and allowing peace to return. A cognitive loop begins when your brain perceives something as unresolved. Maybe you regret what you said in a conversation, or you're nervous about what might happen tomorrow. Instead of letting it go, the brain treats the thought like unfinished business, pressing replay over and over, as if repeating it enough times will finally bring resolution. The truth is, this only creates mental noise. It magnifies stress, increases anxiety, and makes restful sleep almost impossible. But cognitive loop breaking interrupts this automatic cycle by introducing something unexpected, a mental disruption that forces the brain to pause. That small pause creates the space you need to step out of the loop. Think of it like this. Imagine your mind is a wheel spinning endlessly in one direction. Each worry keeps the wheel turning faster and faster. Trying to stop it directly often makes it spin harder because resistance gives it energy. But what if instead of pushing against it, you placed a small stick in the wheel's path? Suddenly the cycle would stop on its own. That's the essence of cognitive loop breaking, not fighting the thought, but gently surprising the mind so it loses its rhythm. Consider Sarah, a creative designer who lies awake almost every night worrying about work deadlines. The loop always follows the same pattern. She imagines herself failing, disappointing her team, and then imagines the consequences of failure. The more she tries not to think about it, the louder the loop becomes. But one night Sarah learns about cognitive loop breaking. Instead of resisting the loop, she chooses a random, harmless image to throw into the cycle. As the thoughts begin circling, what if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? Sarah interrupts the cycle by suddenly picturing a big, bright yellow balloon floating into the sky. The image is unexpected, neutral and harmless. Her mind, caught off guard, pauses. For a moment, the loop loses its power, and into that pause, calmness enters. The more Sarah practices, the more creative she becomes with her interruptions. Sometimes she pictures the balloon popping into confetti. Other times she imagines a silly dancing animal or a peaceful scene of ocean waves. The content doesn't matter. What matters is that the interruption is surprising enough to break the automatic rhythm of worry. Once the loop is broken, her brain shifts gears. Instead of being locked in repetitive stress, it begins to follow the new image. And because she chooses peaceful, pleasant interruptions, her mind naturally drifts toward calmness, allowing her to finally sleep. Why does this technique work so effectively? Because the human brain thrives on patterns. When you repeat a worry, you strengthen the neural pathway that carries that thought. Over time, the worry becomes automatic, almost like a habit. But when you introduce something unexpected, the brain has to stop. It cannot follow its usual pattern because the chain has been disrupted. And in that moment of disruption, you gain control. You get to decide what direction your thoughts go next. You can choose peace instead of panic. There's also a deeper truth here. Anxiety feeds on familiarity. It loves predictability. It knows exactly how to trap you in what-if scenarios and I should have regrets. But the moment you surprise it, anxiety loses its grip. By interrupting the loop, you teach your subconscious that it doesn't need to obsess. It doesn't need to keep replaying. It can let go. If you want to try cognitive loop breaking tonight, here's how. The next time your thoughts begin to circle endlessly, don't fight them. Let the loop begin. Then, at any point, gently throw in an interruption. Picture something neutral, random, or even funny. Imagine a red door opening, a bird flying across the sky, or a child blowing bubbles. It doesn't matter what you choose, as long as it's unrelated to your anxiety. The more surprising, the better. Your brain will pause, because it can't keep repeating the same loop while also processing something new. That pause is where calmness begins. Over time, practicing this technique retrains your mind. Instead of automatically spiraling into loops of stress, it learns to shift gears. It becomes easier to replace anxious repetition with calming images. Slowly, your subconscious begins to prefer peace over panic. The loops show up less often, and when they do, you know exactly how to break them. Cognitive loop breaking is like having a secret lever inside your mind. You don't need to be trapped in cycles of fear and regret. You don't need to stay stuck in spirals of what if. You can interrupt them at any moment. And once you learn this skill, your thoughts no longer control you. You control them. So tonight, when your mind starts spinning, remember the broken record. Instead of letting it play endlessly, lift the needle. Surprise your mind. Insert something unexpected. And watch as the loop loses power, dissolving into silence. That silence is where rest begins. That silence is where peace lives. Time displacement. Visualization anxiety often feels like being trapped in a single moment. Your mind grabs hold of something, maybe a memory from the past or a fear of the future, and it refuses to let go. You keep replaying it over and over until it feels like you're stuck in time, locked in a loop you can't escape. This is why sleepless nights feel so heavy. Your body may be tired, but your mind is running endlessly in circles. That's where the technique called time displacement visualization comes in. It gently teaches your brain to step out of the painful moment it's stuck in and drift into a different, calmer point in time, one that feels safe, peaceful, and healing. Think of time as a flowing river. Most of the time you stand on one small section of the riverbank, staring at the same patch of water. If that patch happens to be stormy, with crashing waves of anxiety or guilt, you get trapped there. But the river of your life is vast. There are countless moments, peaceful ones from the past, hopeful ones in the future, that are waiting for you to return to them. Time displacement visualization invites you to gently float down that river, leaving behind the stormy waters and arriving in a calmer part of your timeline. Consider Clara, a lawyer who spends night after night worrying about work. Her mind is caught between two places, replaying arguments she had during the day and worrying about meetings tomorrow. Both directions, past and future, keep her locked in anxiety. But then Clara learns about this technique. Instead of staying stuck, she closes her eyes and imagines herself stepping into the river of time. She allows her mind to drift backward, toward a memory from her childhood. She sees herself at 10 years old, sitting under the shade of a giant oak tree on a warm summer day. She can feel the grass beneath her fingers, smell the sweetness of blooming, jasmine in the air, and hear the gentle hum of cicadas in the distance. Slowly her body relaxes, her breathing deepens, the tension in her shoulders fades. For those few moments, Clara is no longer the anxious adult lying in bed. She is the child again, safe, peaceful, and free. What makes this work so powerfully is that the brain doesn't fully separate imagined experience from real experience. When you vividly place yourself in a calm moment, whether it's a real memory or an imagined one, your brain reacts as if it's happening now. Stress hormones fade. Relaxation hormones rise. Your body responds to the calmness of the image, not the stress of the present. That's why time displacement visualization can feel so immediate, so powerful. It convinces your nervous system that you've stepped out of danger and into safety. And here's the beautiful part. You don't only have to go backward. If you don't have a comforting memory to hold on to, you can drift forward into the future. You can imagine a version of yourself sitting peacefully on a beach, watching the waves, or a future where you've overcome your current struggles and you're sitting with loved ones, relaxed and content. The mind is flexible. It can travel anywhere on the timeline. The important part is that you don't stay stuck in the anxious now. You move, you drift, you release. This technique also breaks a critical illusion of anxiety, the idea that your present worry is permanent. When you move your awareness into another time, you prove to yourself that no thought, no emotion, and no moment lasts forever. Everything flows. Everything passes. The fear you feel now is only one small drop in a much larger river. And if you can shift your awareness to another place in that river, you realize you are not trapped. You are free. To try time displacement visualization tonight, begin by closing your eyes. Notice the moment you're stuck in, the thought, the worry, the replay. Then imagine stepping gently into a flowing river. Feel yourself drifting. Ask yourself, where in time would I rather be right now? Maybe it's a comforting memory. Maybe it's a dream of the future. Maybe it's even an imagined place you've never visited before. Don't force it. Let your mind guide you. Allow yourself to experience it fully. Feel the sights, the sounds, the textures, the sensations. Stay there as long as you like. You'll notice that as your mind travels, your body follows, growing calmer, slower, more at peace. Over time, practicing this creates a powerful subconscious habit. Your brain learns that it doesn't have to stay trapped in the stressful present. It always has the option to step out, to drift, to move toward peace. Anxiety loses its grip because it no longer convinces you that this is forever. You've proven to yourself over and over that time is fluid, and you can choose where to place your awareness. So the next time your thoughts trap you in a painful loop, remember, you are not stuck. You are not chained to this moment. You are standing in a river, and you can drift to calmer waters whenever you choose. The past holds peace, the future holds hope, and your imagination holds endless possibilities. Time displacement. Visualization is simply the key that unlocks that freedom. Forgotten name paradox. There's a strange little experience almost everyone has had. You're trying to remember a name, a word, or a detail that feels just out of reach. It sits right on the tip of your tongue, but the harder you try to grab it, the further it slips away. Minutes pass, sometimes hours, and then when you finally give up, the name pops into your mind effortlessly, almost as if it was waiting for you to stop struggling. This odd yet familiar phenomenon is called the forgotten name paradox, and it carries a powerful psychological lesson. The harder the mind pushes, the tighter it becomes. But when you release, relax, and allow, clarity arrives on its own. And this paradox can be intentionally used to break cycles of stress, overthinking, and sleeplessness. Think of how anxiety works at night. You lie in bed replaying events, worrying about the future or obsessing over what you should have said or done. The more you try to solve the thought, the louder it gets. Your mind searches for answers in a frantic, restless way, and the result is even more tension. This is the same principle as the forgotten name. The more effort you force, the less access you have to calmness. The paradox shows us that peace doesn't come from pushing harder, but from releasing the grip. Imagine Michael, who often finds himself lying awake long after midnight, replaying conversations from work. He feels embarrassed about small mistakes and regrets things he said. His mind runs in loops, searching for the perfect way to rewrite the past. The more he tries to control the thoughts, the stronger they get. But one night, Michael decides to experiment with the forgotten name paradox. Instead of resisting his anxiety, he gently shifts his focus onto a harmless, unimportant puzzle, trying to recall the name of a character from an old childhood cartoon. He knows he won't remember it immediately, but that's the point. He lets his mind wander softly around the memory, picturing scenes, voices, and colors, but then deliberately releases the need for an answer. As he does this, Something subtle yet powerful happens. His brain stops chasing his worries. The anxious loop loses energy, because Michael's attention has shifted to a puzzle that carries no emotional weight. And because he eventually lets go of the search, his mind starts to soften. His muscles release their tension and his breathing naturally slows. The forgotten name never even becomes important. What matters is the paradox. Letting go creates calm. This method works because the subconscious mind operates differently from the conscious mind. The conscious mind pushes, demands, insists. The subconscious, on the other hand, works quietly in the background. It delivers insights, solutions, and memories only when pressure is removed. Anxiety thrives when the conscious mind is in overdrive, but when you practice the forgotten name paradox, you bypass the tension. You let the subconscious step forward, and in that space, peace naturally emerges. The power of this paradox is not limited to names or words. It can be applied directly to stress and worry. The next time you feel caught in overthinking, choose a neutral puzzle to engage with. Maybe it's trying to remember the layout of your childhood home. Maybe it's trying to recall the lyrics of a song you haven't heard in years. Maybe it's imagining a detail that you almost know but not quite. Let yourself lean into the puzzle, but then, and this is key, let go of the urgency to solve it. Allow the answer to come later, or not at all. As you release, your mind will relax. And when the grip loosens, the anxious thoughts lose their intensity. Another way to use this paradox is to simply remind yourself that control often backfires. The more you force sleep, the more it runs from you. The more you chase calmness, the more restless you feel. But when you surrender the chase, when you stop pushing, the very thing you were chasing gently arrives on its own. Just as the forgotten name appears when you stop searching, peace arrives when you stop forcing. Over time, practicing the forgotten name paradox rewires how your mind responds to anxiety. Instead of tightening with effort, you train yourself to loosen, release, and trust. The subconscious learns that letting go is safe, that answers will arrive in their own time, and that peace is always closer than it seems. What was once a cycle of restless tension becomes an opportunity for effortless calm. So tonight, if you find yourself trapped in anxious thought loops, try this. Don't fight the thoughts. Don't try to control them. Instead, pick a harmless puzzle, something small, neutral, and even a little silly. Play with it gently, then let go of the need for resolution. As you release, notice the paradox unfold. The grip of anxiety fades, calmness appears, and without struggle, without force, sleep comes to greet you. The forgotten name paradox is more than a curious mental trick. It's a reminder of one of life's greatest lessons. Sometimes the only way to gain control is to stop trying to control at all. Reverse inner dialogue. Every mind carries a voice inside it. Sometimes it's gentle, sometimes harsh, but it's always there, narrating, analyzing, predicting, and replaying. This inner dialogue can be helpful when it guides you through a decision or helps you plan, but when it turns against you, when it begins repeating anxious thoughts and self-criticism, it becomes one of the biggest obstacles to peace. Late at night, when the world is quiet, this inner voice can feel the loudest. It rehearses arguments, imagines worst-case scenarios, and fuels endless what-if questions. This is where the technique called reverse inner dialogue comes in, a clever way of disarming the inner voice by simply flipping it backward. At first, the idea might sound strange. Why would reversing your thoughts help you? But think about how anxiety operates. It thrives on predictability. The same words, the same sentences, the same scenarios replay in your mind over and over. Because they're coherent and familiar, they feel powerful and believable. But when you take that inner dialogue and deliberately play it in reverse, like rewinding a tape, the words lose meaning. The sentences collapse into fragments. The seriousness of the thought dissolves, and suddenly the anxiety that once felt so heavy turns into something neutral, even a little absurd. Imagine Lisa, a teacher who often lies awake before parent-teacher meetings. Her mind replays conversations before they happen. What if I say the wrong thing? What if they criticize me? What if I'm not prepared? These phrases string together into a narrative that feels overwhelming. But tonight, Lisa tries something different. Instead of letting the sentences flow forward, she begins to imagine them unraveling backward. Prepared not I'm. Me criticize they if what. Thing wrong the say I if what. At first it sounds odd and meaningless, but that's exactly the point. The reverse dialogue catches her brain off guard. It interrupts the predictable rhythm of anxiety, breaking the loop. As Lisa continues, something surprising happens. She starts to feel less tense. The words that once carried fear now sound like nonsense. The absurdity makes her smirk. Her body softens, her breathing slows, and the grip of worry fades. What was once a stressful inner dialogue has been transformed into harmless background noise. This works because the brain naturally craves meaning. When thoughts are structured and logical, they pull us in emotionally. Anxiety knows this, which is why it uses coherent, repetitive stories to trap us. But when you scramble or reverse those stories, you rob them of coherence. Without structure, the brain can't hold on to them in the same way. They lose their emotional weight. And in that moment of confusion, peace slips in. The beauty of reverse inner dialogue is that it doesn't require you to silence your mind, which is almost impossible when you're anxious. Instead, it gives your mind permission to keep speaking, but in a way that strips the dialogue of power. It's like allowing a storm to continue, but turning down its thunder until it's just a distant hum. You can practice this in many ways. If your inner dialogue says, I'm going to fail, flip it, fail to going, am I? If it says, they don't like me, reverse it, me like don't they? The meaning dissolves instantly. With repetition, the brain becomes intrigued by the strange reversal, focusing on the novelty instead of the fear. Anxiety loses the energy it was feeding on, and you return to calmness. Over time, practicing reverse inner dialogue retrains your subconscious. It learns that anxious thoughts don't need to be feared or obeyed, because their power depends entirely on structure. Break that structure, and they fall apart. The subconscious begins to interrupt anxiety on its own, flipping thoughts into nonsense before they have a chance to dig in. This turns your mind from an enemy into an ally. So the next time your inner voice grows too loud, don't fight it. Don't try to argue with it or shut it down. Instead, let it speak, but reverse it. Play it backward in your mind until it becomes meaningless noise. Watch as its intensity fades, replaced by quietness and even a touch of humor. What was once a serious threat becomes a harmless echo, and in that soft space your body will relax, your mind will slow, and sleep will gently arrive. Reverse inner dialogue is more than a trick. It's a reminder that even the loudest thoughts are only stories. And stories only have power when they make sense. Strip away the sense, and you strip away the fear. Mind maze navigation. The human mind often feels like a maze, full of twists, turns, dead ends, and hidden passageways. When anxiety strikes, this maze becomes especially overwhelming. One thought leads to another, which leads to another, until you're lost inside a web of possibilities and fears. The harder you try to find a way out, the more trapped you feel. This endless wandering inside your own head is why sleepless nights feel so heavy. The technique called mind maze navigation was created to help you move through this inner labyrinth with calmness instead of panic, not by escaping the maze, but by learning how to navigate it with awareness. Anxiety is like wandering in a maze without a map. Every turn feels uncertain. You keep circling back to the same place, asking the same questions. What if I fail? What if I regret this? What if something goes wrong? Each turn looks different at first, but it eventually leads back to the same core fear. This is why anxiety feels endless, because it's not a straight path, it's a looping maze. Mind maze navigation works by slowing down your pace and teaching you to see the structure of the maze itself. When you see the patterns clearly, the confusion fades and the fear loses its grip. Imagine Alex, a university student lying awake before an exam. His thoughts pull him in every direction. One moment he's worried about forgetting answers, the next he's thinking about disappointing his parents, then he's imagining what failure would mean for his future. Each thought feels like a turn in the maze, and soon he's overwhelmed. But instead of running faster, Alex decides to try mind maze navigation. He closes his eyes, pictures himself inside a real maze and begins to observe. Each thought that appears, he imagines as a pathway. Instead of panicking, he simply notices, here's the path of failure, here's the path of regret, here's the path of worry about the future. He doesn't rush to follow any of them. He just walks slowly, looking at the signs. Something powerful happens when you practice this kind of awareness. The thoughts stop feeling like absolute truths and start looking like options. You realize that the maze is built out of your own patterns and that you're not trapped. You're just walking through. Anxiety loses its urgency when you stop running blindly. The simple act of observing slows the pace, and in that slowness, peace appears. The beauty of mind maze navigation is that you don't need to escape the maze to feel free. You just need to understand that you are the navigator, not the prisoner. Thoughts will appear like paths, but you don't have to walk down every one. You can pause, breathe, and choose. And the more you choose calmness, the more the maze begins to shift. The pathways that once led to fear and repetition begin to fade, while new pathways toward peace grow stronger. This technique also reveals a deeper truth. Most of the time, the maze isn't real. It's imagined. Anxiety convinces you that danger is everywhere. But when you stop and look closely, you realize the walls of the maze are made of nothing more than thoughts. Thoughts can feel heavy and solid, but they're not permanent. They pass just like clouds in the sky. When you stop chasing them, you see their temporary nature clearly. If you want to try mind maze navigation tonight, close your eyes and picture yourself in a maze. As each anxious thought arises, imagine it as a corridor. Instead of rushing down it, just pause and notice. This is the worry about tomorrow. This is the regret from yesterday. This is the fear of failing. Don't fight the paths, don't destroy them. Just acknowledge them. Then gently guide yourself toward a calmer corridor, maybe an image of a safe place, a peaceful memory, or even the idea of resting quietly. With practice, your mind learns that not every path is worth walking. Some can simply be observed and released. Over time, this practice rewires your subconscious. It learns that you are not lost in the maze. You are the one walking through it. You are the navigator, always capable of choosing which path to follow. The dead ends lose their power because you know you can always turn back. The endless loops lose their grip because you know you can pause at any moment. Slowly, the maze becomes less frightening. It turns into a space of exploration, not imprisonment. So the next time your thoughts trap you in endless loops, remember, you're not stuck. You're simply walking through a maze built by your own mind. You don't have to run. You don't have to panic. Just walk slowly, observe the paths, and choose the ones that bring peace. Mind maze navigation is not about escaping your thoughts, but about mastering them, one calm step at a time. Thought compression. The human mind is endlessly creative. At any moment, hundreds of thoughts, memories, and ideas can rush forward all at once. Some are helpful, some are random, and many are heavy with worry. When you're lying in bed at night, those thoughts often arrive in waves, tumbling over one another, filling your mind until you feel completely overwhelmed. It's as if your brain has opened too many windows at once, flooding you with information you can't process. The technique known as thought compression is designed to calm this mental storm. It takes the chaos of scattered thoughts and gently condenses them into something smaller, lighter, and easier to handle. Think of it like this. Imagine holding 100 balloons in your hands. Each balloon represents a thought. Some about work, some about family, some about fears, some about regrets. It feels impossible to manage them all at once. But what if you tied them together, compressing them into one single bundle? Suddenly, instead of juggling 100, you're simply holding one. That's what thought compression does inside your mind. It gathers scattered energy and brings it into one condensed, manageable form. Let's imagine Daniel, who often lies awake at night overwhelmed by everything he has to do. He thinks about unfinished work projects, bills he needs to pay, conversations he hasn't had, mistakes from the past, and even random memories that pop up without warning. Each thought feels important, each demands attention, but trying to handle them all at once leaves him restless. Tonight, Daniel tries thought compression. He closes his eyes and imagines all his thoughts as glowing lights floating around him. Then, with each breath, He pictures the lights slowly moving closer together, merging into one single orb of soft light. The scattered chaos condenses into unity. Instead of being surrounded by noise, Daniel now holds a single image in his mind. And in that moment, he feels calmer. The weight of 100 thoughts has been reduced to one gentle presence. This works because of how the brain processes information. When your thoughts scatter, your nervous system interprets it as overwhelm. But when you compress them into one image, your brain receives a signal of completion. It feels like order has been restored, even if nothing has been solved logically. The mind relaxes because it no longer feels pulled in 100 directions at once. You can practice thought compression in different ways. Some people like to imagine placing all their thoughts into a single box, then closing the lid. Others imagine shrinking their thoughts into a tiny dot that dissolves into the distance. Some people use the image of a glowing ball of energy, compact and calming. The form doesn't matter. What matters is the process of gathering, condensing, and simplifying. Instead of drowning in a storm of thoughts, you unify them into one calm symbol. The more you practice, the more powerful it becomes. Over time, your subconscious learns that scattered thinking doesn't have to spiral into panic. It can be gathered, compressed, and gently released. This builds a new mental habit. Instead of chasing every single thought, you simply unify them. Your nervous system calms, your breathing slows, and sleep arrives more naturally. There's also a deeper lesson hidden in this practice. Thoughts are not as solid as they appear. When you're in the middle of them, they feel heavy, endless, and overwhelming. But when you visualize compressing them, you realize how flexible they are. You can gather them, shrink them, reshape them, and even dissolve them. They are not immovable walls. They are energy, and energy can always be redirected. So tonight, when your mind feels scattered, don't chase your thoughts. Don't try to resolve each one individually. Instead, close your eyes and imagine gathering them all together. See them condense into one small, simple image. Hold that image gently in your awareness, and then let it soften, shrink, and fade away. Watch how your body follows, the tension in your muscles releasing, your breath deepening, your heartbeat slowing. Thought compression doesn't just quiet your mind, it gives you the experience of control, reminding you that even in chaos, you can create simplicity. In the end, thought compression is not about silencing your thoughts. It's about transforming them. It's about turning a storm into a single raindrop, 100 voices into one whisper, and a restless night into a peaceful rest. Ego Dissociation Drill. Most of the suffering people feel in their daily lives comes from the voice of the ego, that part of the mind that clings tightly to identity, reputation, pride, and fear of judgment. The ego is the storyteller inside your head that constantly says, "This is me, this is mine, what if I lose, what if I fail? What will they think of me?" At its best, the ego gives us a sense of individuality. But at its worst, it chains us to worry, insecurity, and endless comparison. It is the part of the mind that refuses to rest because it is terrified of not being in control. That's why the ego dissociation drill can be so powerful. It's not about destroying the ego, but about learning to step back from it so you can breathe without its constant noise. Think of the ego as a mask. You wear it every day when you go out into the world. It helps you play roles, worker, friend, student, parent. But the danger is forgetting that it's only a mask. You begin to believe the mask is your entire face, your entire being. And when the mask feels attacked, when someone criticizes you, when you fail at something, when you feel embarrassed, it reacts with fear, anger, or shame. The ego dissociation drill invites you to gently take the mask off, just for a moment, and see what lies underneath. Imagine Rachel, who spends her nights replaying how she embarrassed herself at a dinner party. Her ego whispers, "They think you're awkward. You said the wrong thing. They don't respect you anymore." The words echo so loudly that she can't sleep, but tonight she tries the drill. She closes her eyes and imagines herself stepping outside of her own body, as if she were a quiet observer standing nearby. She looks back at herself, not as Rachel, the embarrassed guest, but as a human being simply caught in a moment. She sees the anxiety, the restless tossing in bed, the thoughts racing through her head. And she realizes, This is not all of me. This is just my ego clinging to an image. The grip loosens. The shame fades into perspective. This drill works because it creates distance. Normally, when the ego speaks, we merge with its voice, we believe its every word. But when you dissociate from it, when you step outside yourself and watch from a higher perspective, you see the voice for what it is, just thoughts, just stories, just a mask. You are not the mask, you are the awareness behind it. The practice can be simple. Close your eyes. Picture your thoughts as a stream flowing out of your head. Watch them pass one after another without attaching to them. Then, imagine lifting yourself gently out of your body, floating just a little above, and looking down. See your body lying there, breathing, holding tension, carrying the weight of the ego. And then, remind yourself, that is not all of me. I am the one who observes. I am more than my name, my role, my fears. The moment you remind yourself of this truth, your chest feels lighter, your breath deepens, and your body begins to relax. Over time, the ego dissociation drill reshapes how you interact with life. When someone criticizes you, instead of reacting immediately, you step back and observe. When anxiety grips you, you notice it as something happening inside the mask, not as your ultimate identity. When failure whispers, you see it as a story the ego tells, not as a reflection of your true worth. The ego still exists, but its power over you weakens. There's also a deeper spiritual truth hidden here. Many traditions teach that peace doesn't come from strengthening the ego, but from softening it. The more tightly you cling to identity, the more fragile you feel. The more lightly you wear it, the freer you become. The ego dissociation drill gives you that freedom. It shows you that the voice of fear and pride is not your true self. Your true self is the calm awareness that watches, silently, patiently, without judgment. If you want to try it tonight, here's a simple way. Lie down, close your eyes, and let your thoughts flow. Don't resist them. Don't argue. Just let them appear. Then, imagine stepping outside yourself. Picture your body lying in bed, breathing gently. Watch your thoughts swirl like smoke above your head. Then say quietly to yourself, "That is not me. I am the one who observes." Stay with that image until the thoughts lose their sharpness. Let them dissolve one by one, until you are left with nothing but silence. Soon, your body will follow your mind into calmness. The tension will release, the restless energy will fade, and sleep will come not because you forced it, but because you remembered who you are without the mask. The ego dissociation drill is more than a technique. It is a doorway out of fear, out of insecurity, out of endless comparison. A doorway back into the spacious awareness that has always been with you, waiting beneath the mask. When you step through that doorway, you realize peace was never gone. It was only hidden beneath the noise of the ego. And once you see that clearly, you can return to it anytime you choose. Negative space visualization. When most people think about calming their minds, they focus on what they can fill it with: positive affirmations, peaceful images, soothing mantras. But sometimes, the most powerful form of peace doesn't come from adding more. It comes from taking things away. The technique called negative space visualization is based on this idea. Instead of trying to force your mind to hold on to more thoughts, you learn to focus on what is not there. You begin to pay attention to the gaps, the silences, the empty spaces between your thoughts. And in those spaces, you discover a kind of stillness that feels deeper than anything you could imagine. Think about how art works. A painting is not just the shapes and colors on the canvas. It's also the empty spaces that make those shapes stand out. A sculpture is not just the stone itself, but the carved-out emptiness that gives it form. Music is not just the notes, but the pauses, the silences, the breaths between sounds. Without negative space, beauty collapses into noise. The same is true for the mind. Without empty spaces, your thoughts crowd together so tightly that you feel suffocated. But when you learn to see and feel the gaps, the quiet moments, the pauses, you suddenly realize that your mind already has peace hidden within it. It's just waiting for you to notice. Imagine David, who spends his nights overwhelmed with restless thoughts. Every time one fades, another takes its place. His brain feels like a crowded room where everyone is talking at once. But one night he tries negative space visualization. Instead of focusing on the thoughts themselves, he shifts his awareness to the silence between them. When one thought arises, "I'm not doing enough at work," he notices it, then gently waits for the gap that comes after it. Then another thought appears. "What if I fail tomorrow?" And again, he turns his attention to the quiet pause before the next thought. Slowly, the noise begins to loosen. For the first time, he experiences his thoughts not as an endless stream, but as individual ripples in a vast ocean of silence. This shift is profound. Normally, when we are trapped in overthinking, we identify completely with the thought itself. We merge with it. We become the fear, the memory, the regret. But when you focus on the negative space, you step into something bigger. You see that thoughts come and go, but silence is always there beneath them. Like clouds passing across a sky that never disappears, thoughts are temporary, but the quiet space that holds them is permanent. The practice can be done in simple steps. Close your eyes and let your thoughts come naturally. Don't resist them. Don't try to stop them. Instead, wait for the small pause that happens before another thought arrives. Notice it. Sit with it. The pause may be short, only a second long, but it is real. And with practice, those gaps become larger, clearer, more spacious. Your mind begins to slow down, not because you forced it, but because you shifted your attention from the noise to the silence. Another powerful way to practice negative space visualization is with imagery. You might imagine your thoughts as stars in a night sky. At first, the stars seem endless, scattered across your vision, but then you focus not on the stars, but on the vast blackness around them. You realize the darkness is infinite, and the stars, no matter how many, are only tiny specks. Or you might imagine your thoughts as words written on a page. Instead of staring at the words, you notice the white paper surrounding them. That white space is infinite, supportive, unshaken by the letters scribbled across it. Over time, this practice changes how you experience yourself. You stop identifying with every thought as if it were the ultimate truth. Instead, you recognize yourself as the space in which thoughts appear. You are not the worry. You are not the memory. You are not the what if. You are the silence holding them. You are the sky beneath the clouds. You are the paper beneath the words. You are the space itself. This realization creates a deep sense of freedom. Suddenly, anxious thoughts lose their weight. They may still appear, but they are surrounded by so much stillness that they no longer feel overwhelming. It's like noticing a single flame in a vast night. Small, flickering, unable to burn you. If you practice negative space visualization at night, you'll notice something powerful. Your body follows your awareness. As your mind begins to notice silence, your muscles relax. Your breathing becomes slower and deeper. Your nervous system begins to reset. Sleep doesn't have to be forced. It comes naturally because your mind has softened into the quiet space that was always there. And the more you practice, the more this carries into daily life. In stressful conversations, instead of being trapped in every word, you notice the pauses. In arguments, instead of being consumed by heat, you notice the quiet moments between sentences. In fear, instead of drowning in thoughts, you remember the silence that holds them all. The deepest truth of negative space visualization is this: peace was never lost. It was only hidden beneath the noise of your thoughts. The silence has always been there, vast and untouched, waiting for you to remember it. And once you do, you realize that you don't need to add more to your mind to feel calm. You only need to notice what was already there, the space between, the pause, the quiet. So tonight, when your thoughts feel too loud, don't chase them, don't argue with them. Instead, close your eyes, take a breath, and listen for the silence between the noise. Step into that space, and you'll discover a peace that is deeper than thought, a peace that was always yours. Memory echo suppression. The mind has a way of holding on to the past long after an event is over. A conversation ends, a mistake is made, a painful moment passes, yet it doesn't truly leave. Instead, it lingers like an echo, repeating itself again and again inside your head. You replay the words you said, the expression on someone's face, the way you wish things had gone differently. These echoes of memory can be just as powerful as the moment itself, sometimes even stronger. And when they return late at night, when the world is quiet and your guard is down, they can keep you trapped in a cycle of regret and restlessness. This is where the technique called memory echo suppression becomes essential. It's not about erasing the past, it's about learning how to quiet its echo so it no longer dominates the present. Think about how echoes work in the physical world. You shout into a canyon, and your voice bounces back softer each time until it fades into silence. The memory echoes in your mind work the same way. They repeat because your brain hasn't yet let them go. But just like sound fades when the canyon walls stop reflecting it, mental echoes fade when you stop feeding them energy. Memory echo suppression teaches you how to gently absorb those echoes, letting them dissolve into stillness. Consider Hannah, who lies awake night after night replaying a breakup conversation. She hears the same words in her head. It's not working. I think we should move on. Every time she hears it again, her chest tightens. She wonders what she could have said differently. She imagines alternate outcomes. The memory has ended in reality, but in her mind it replays endlessly. Tonight, she tries memory echo suppression. She closes her eyes and imagines the words of the memory not as sentences, but as sound waves bouncing in a canyon. She sees them echoing once, twice, 3 times, each one softer than the last. With every repetition, she breathes deeply and imagines the sound dissolving into the air until it's no longer audible. By the end, she's left with silence. The conversation is not erased, but its echo no longer has power over her. This technique works because memory is not static. Every time you recall an event, you're not replaying the exact original moment. You're recreating it in the present. And if you attach strong emotion to it, you reinforce it, making the echo louder. But when you practice suppression, by visualizing the echo growing quieter, by breathing through it, by refusing to feed it with new energy, the memory begins to lose its sharpness. It becomes softer, less vivid, more distant. Eventually, it becomes something that happened, not something that still hurts. There are many ways to practice memory echo suppression. Some people imagine their memories as voices inside a cave that fade as the cave fills with light. Others picture them as ripples in water, each one spreading wider and softer, until the surface becomes completely still again. Some imagine the words of the memory written on a chalkboard, then slowly erased with each breath. The form doesn't matter. What matters is the process of letting the echo fade instead of fueling it. What makes this technique so powerful is that it doesn't deny the past. You're not pretending the event didn't happen. You're not erasing your history. You're simply shifting your relationship to it. Instead of being dominated by the endless replay, you're guiding the memory into quietness, into acceptance. You're reminding yourself, the past is over. The echo is only in my mind. Over time, practicing memory echo suppression builds emotional resilience. Regrets lose their sharpness. Embarrassments fade. Painful conversations stop replaying in the same way. The echoes still appear occasionally. But now you know how to meet them. Instead of panicking, you breathe. Instead of feeding them, you let them fade. Instead of living in the past, you return to the present. This practice also unlocks something profound, the recognition that silence is your natural state. The echoes are temporary disturbances, but silence is always waiting underneath. Every memory, no matter how strong, is like a sound in a canyon. It can only last if the walls keep bouncing it back. The moment you stop reinforcing it, the canyon grows quiet again. So tonight, if you find yourself caught in the replay of a memory, whether it's something you regret, something you lost, or something that hurt you, try this. Don't fight the memory. Don't force it away. Simply picture it as an echo in a canyon, or a ripple in water, or words on a fading page. Watch it grow softer with every breath. Remind yourself, this is only an echo, not the event itself. Allow it to fade and let the silence return. Because the truth is, you are not the echo. You are the silence beneath it. And when you remember that, peace is always within reach. Attention scattering. One of the most overlooked causes of anxiety and sleeplessness is the simple fact that the human mind is not built to hold a single thought forever. Thoughts are meant to move, to shift, to flow. But when worry takes hold, it traps your attention like a spotlight stuck in one place. You obsess over a single mistake, a single fear, a single possibility, until it grows so large that it fills your entire mental space. This is when the mind begins to suffocate, not because the thought is unbearable in itself, but because your attention is glued to it so tightly that nothing else exists. The technique known as attention scattering is designed to break that grip. It takes your focus, which has been locked onto one heavy object, and scatters it gently across many harmless, lighter ones. In doing so, the weight of anxiety dissolves. Think about light. When concentrated into a laser, it can cut through steel, but when scattered, it becomes soft, harmless, even beautiful. Your attention works the same way. When it is concentrated on a single fear, it feels sharp and unbearable. But when it is scattered, spread across different points, it loses its intensity. The fear no longer feels so powerful. It becomes just one of many small ripples in your mind instead of a roaring wave. Imagine Claire, lying in bed replaying an argument she had earlier in the day. Her attention is locked onto the memory like a laser. She keeps seeing the same expression on her friend's face, hearing the same words, feeling the same shame. It's overwhelming. Tonight she tries attention scattering. Instead of fighting the memory, she begins to shift her awareness outward. She notices the sound of the clock ticking. She notices the softness of the blanket against her skin. She notices the rise and fall of her own breath. She even imagines the faint hum of the world outside her window, cars in the distance, the quiet rhythm of the night. Suddenly, her attention is no longer locked in one place. It has scattered into many, and with that shift, the argument loses its grip. What once felt like a laser burning into her mind now feels like a small flicker of light, surrounded by calmness. This works because the brain can't hold the same level of intensity when attention is divided. Anxiety depends on singular focus, on looping one thought again and again until it feels unbearable. But when you deliberately scatter attention, you weaken the loop. The thought still exists, but it no longer dominates. It becomes one small voice in a room full of others. There are countless ways to practice attention scattering. One is sensory awareness, noticing multiple sensations at once. The feeling of your body against the bed, the temperature of the air, the sound of your breath, the faint colors behind your closed eyelids. Another is mental scattering, allowing your mind to wander across harmless details, the layout of your childhood home, the names of streets in your neighborhood, the titles of movies you've seen. You don't dwell on any of them. You simply let your attention drift across them lightly, like skipping stones across water. The key is not to force your mind into silence, but to let it spread. When you scatter attention, you don't need to fight the anxious thought. You don't need to prove it wrong. You simply place it back into perspective by surrounding it with other points of focus. In this way, the fear becomes diluted, its sharpness fades, and its weight dissolves into the background. Over time, practicing attention scattering rewires your response to anxiety. Instead of becoming trapped in obsessive focus, your mind learns to soften, to expand, to spread out. You develop the ability to hold multiple points of awareness at once, which prevents any single worry from dominating you. This is incredibly freeing because it shows you that no matter how heavy a thought feels, it is never the only thing in your mind. There is always space around it. Another benefit of attention scattering is that it connects you back to the present moment. When anxiety pulls you into the past or the future, scattering your awareness onto your senses anchors you here and now. You realize you are lying safely in your bed, breathing, alive. The argument, the fear, the regret, none of them are happening in this moment. They are echoes, and the present is far larger than those echoes. So tonight, if you find yourself fixated on one painful thought, try this. Don't fight the thought. Instead, scatter your attention. Notice 5 things you can feel, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can imagine, 2 things you can see in your memory, and 1 thing you can breathe into. Let your focus spread wide, light, and soft. Watch how the thought begins to shrink in the vastness of your awareness. Attention scattering is more than a calming exercise. It is a reminder that the mind is vast and spacious. No single thought can fill it unless you let it. And when you scatter your focus across the richness of the present, you discover that peace has been there all along, waiting for your attention to return. False memory induction. Memory is one of the most fascinating and fragile parts of the human mind. We often believe that our memories are exact recordings of what happened, like a film stored in the brain. But the truth is far stranger. Memories are not fixed. They are reconstructed every time we recall them. Each time we revisit a moment, we reshape it slightly with new emotions, new perspectives and new details. This is why two people can experience the same event, but remember it differently. It is also why our memories can deceive us, turning into echoes, distortions, and even fabrications. The technique known as false memory induction makes use of this strange flexibility. By deliberately creating imagined memories, you can teach your brain to loosen its grip on painful ones, softening their intensity and freeing yourself from the past. At first, the idea may sound unsettling. Why would you want to implant false memories into your mind? But think about it. Your brain already does this naturally. Every time you replay an event, you alter it. Sometimes you exaggerate it, sometimes you minimize it, sometimes you even imagine details that weren't really there. False memory induction simply uses this natural tendency with purpose. Instead of being trapped in a loop of regret or shame, you introduce new imagined layers until the old memory loses its sharpness. Consider Michael, who constantly replays a humiliating presentation at work. He remembers the stumbles in his words, the awkward silence, the looks on people's faces. Each time he revisits it, the memory feels just as painful as the day it happened. But tonight he tries false memory induction. He closes his eyes and imagines the same presentation. But this time, he imagines the audience smiling, nodding, even clapping at the end. He imagines himself laughing lightly at a mistake, turning it into a joke, and the room responding warmly. At first it feels strange, even fake. But the more he practices, the more his brain begins to blur the edges between the real memory and the imagined one. The sting of the humiliation softens. The event still happened, but its emotional weight is no longer the same. This works because the brain doesn't perfectly distinguish between real and vividly imagined experiences. Neurological studies have shown that imagining something can activate many of the same brain regions as experiencing it. That's why athletes visualize their performance before competing, and why recalling a happy memory can actually improve your mood in the present. False memory induction uses this same principle, but instead of strengthening a future performance, it reshapes the emotional landscape of a painful past. There are many ways to practice this technique. One approach is to take a negative memory and rewrite its ending in your imagination. Another is to replace harsh expressions in your memory of others with softer ones. Instead of anger, you imagine understanding. Instead of mockery, you imagine compassion. You can even insert entirely new details, imagining a supportive friend present, or imagining yourself responding with confidence. The key is not to deny the event, but to overlay it with enough new imagery that the old emotional imprint weakens. Over time, this practice teaches your brain flexibility. Instead of being trapped by one rigid version of the past, you realize that your memories are malleable, fluid, constantly in motion. This realization is powerful because it shows you that you are not condemned to relive the same pain forever. You can reshape it. You can loosen its grip. You can even dissolve it into neutrality. There is also a deeper lesson here. Memory is not just about the past. It shapes your present identity. If you see yourself as the person who failed, who was rejected, who was humiliated, then your memories become chains. But if you reshape them, if you soften them, rewrite them, reframe them, then you also reshape your identity. You begin to see yourself not as someone trapped in failure, but as someone capable of resilience, growth, and transformation. False memory induction is not about lying to yourself. It is about recognizing that the mind is already a storyteller, already changing the past with every recall. By stepping into that process consciously, you take back control. You become the author of your inner narrative instead of its prisoner. So tonight, if an old memory keeps replaying, don't fight it. Don't argue with it. Instead, let yourself imagine a softer version. Change the tone, change the expression, change the outcome. Let the memory blur until its sharpness fades. With time, the echo will quiet, and the pain will dissolve into something you can live with. Because in the end, you are not defined by your memories. You are defined by the awareness that holds them. And that awareness is always free to rewrite the story. Silent counting reversal. Counting is one of the oldest tricks people use to calm the mind. It gives restless thoughts a rhythm, a structure, something steady to focus on. But ordinary counting, 1, 2, 3, forward into infinity, sometimes isn't enough to quiet an anxious brain. When you're stuck in loops of overthinking, your mind can easily grab onto the numbers and twist them back into the cycle of worry. That's why the method called silent counting reversal works so powerfully. Instead of counting upward, you reverse the process. You count backward silently from a chosen number down to 0. This reversal creates a subtle but profound shift in the brain. It interrupts the loop, forces focus, and slows everything down. Think about what happens when you walk down a staircase. Each step takes you lower, closer to the ground, closer to rest. Silent counting. Reversal works the same way. Every backward number is like a step down into deeper calmness, away from the noise of the day. Unlike forward counting, which feels endless, backward counting has a natural sense of closure. You know you are moving toward an endpoint, towards 0, towards silence. This makes the technique especially powerful when anxiety keeps your thoughts running in circles. Imagine Ethan lying awake with his mind replaying tomorrow's responsibilities. His heart beats quickly, his breathing feels shallow. He tries ordinary counting, 1, 2, 3, but his mind keeps drifting back to the meeting he dreads. Tonight, he decides to try silent counting. Reversal. He picks the number 100. Silently he begins. 100, 99, 98. At first, his thoughts still intrude, but as he continues, the focus required to keep the sequence going backwards begins to absorb his attention. By the time he reaches the 80s, his body feels lighter. By the 70s, his breath has slowed. By the 60s, the thoughts that once felt sharp now drift faintly at the edges. Eventually, before he even finishes, he drifts into sleep. This works because the brain cannot fully engage in backward counting and intrusive thinking at the same time. Reversal requires effort. It forces the mind to stay engaged in a gentle but structured challenge. The loop of anxiety loses energy because attention has been redirected into something both soothing and absorbing. And the silence that comes after each number, that pause before moving to the next, creates tiny gaps of stillness which the body reads as safety. The practice can be tailored in many ways. Some people prefer to start at 100, others start at 50 or even 20. The number itself doesn't matter. What matters is the direction. The key is to do it silently, letting the numbers echo only inside your mind, like soft steps into the dark. You can even combine it with breathing, inhaling as you hold a number, exhaling as you move to the next. This deepens the relaxation, syncing the body with the counting rhythm. What makes silent counting reversal especially useful is that it works quickly. Many calming techniques require long practice, but backward counting grabs the brain's attention right away. It breaks the cycle of racing thoughts in the moment, like pulling a lever that resets the mental machine. With repetition, your subconscious begins to associate the practice with relaxation, so even starting the count can trigger a state of calm. There's also a symbolic power to this technique. Counting forward feels like moving into the future, endless, uncertain, sometimes overwhelming. But counting backward feels like returning to origin, returning to stillness, returning home. Each step down reminds the body, I am safe, I am slowing, I am approaching silence. By the time you reach 0, you are not just finishing a count, you are entering peace. So tonight, when your thoughts won't let go, don't battle them. Don't try to silence them all at once. Instead, choose a number, close your eyes, and begin to count backward, slowly, silently. Feel each number as a step down a gentle staircase, carrying you away from noise and into rest. Let your breath guide the rhythm. Let the silence between numbers stretch longer and softer. And when you finally arrive at 0, don't rush to start again. Simply rest there, in the quiet that remains. Silent counting. Reversal is more than just numbers. It is a reminder that calmness doesn't come from forcing the mind into silence. It comes from guiding it, gently, step by step, back toward stillness, until silence appears naturally, waiting for you at the bottom of the staircase. Thought eraser protocol. The human mind is like a chalkboard. All day long, thoughts are written across it, some in bold, some in faint handwriting, some in scribbles that overlap and blur together. Most of these thoughts fade on their own, erased naturally as the hours pass. But sometimes certain thoughts cling stubbornly, refusing to disappear. They play again and again, leaving behind smudges that stain your mental space. These are the worries, regrets, and fears that echo endlessly in your head. The thought eraser protocol is designed to help you clear those marks. It's a method of visualization that teaches your mind to let go, to wipe the board clean, and to give yourself the gift of mental silence. Imagine this. You are lying awake at night, and your mind will not stop repeating the same scene. Maybe it's a mistake you made at work. Maybe it's an argument with someone you care about. Maybe it's just a vague fear of tomorrow. The thought writes itself again and again on your mental chalkboard until it feels permanent. But the truth is, no thought is permanent. Just like chalk, every thought can be erased. The protocol gives you a way to do it deliberately. Let's take Olivia as an example. She can't stop replaying an awkward moment at a party where she stumbled over her words. The memory feels sharp, embarrassing, and stuck. Tonight, she closes her eyes and imagines that memory as a sentence written in white chalk on a board. She sees it clearly, every word, every detail. Then, slowly, she imagines picking up a soft eraser. With each breath, she wipes a little bit away. At first, the words blur. Then they fade. Then finally, the board is clean. She imagines herself running her hand across the smooth, empty surface. In that moment, the thought doesn't feel permanent anymore. It feels gone. The shame that once clung to it dissolves with the erased chalk. This protocol works because the brain responds powerfully to imagery. When you visualize yourself erasing a thought, your nervous system interprets it as release. The act of seeing it dissolve weakens the emotional charge tied to it. Instead of fighting the thought, which only makes it louder, you give it a beginning, a middle, and an end. You guide it gently out of existence, and your body follows, calming itself in response. There are many ways to adapt the thought eraser protocol. Some people imagine the thought as written words on glass, and with every breath, the letters fog and fade until the glass is clear. Others imagine the thought as ink on paper, which they place into water, watching the letters bleed and dissolve until nothing remains. Still others imagine the thought as a painting on sand, slowly washed away by ocean waves. The image you choose doesn't matter. What matters is the feeling of removal, the transformation of something heavy into nothingness. Over time, practicing this method creates a new habit in your subconscious. Instead of clinging to every thought, your brain learns to release. It learns that nothing needs to be held forever. The more you erase, the easier it becomes. Eventually, even during the day when intrusive thoughts appear, your mind will naturally visualize wiping them away. The board clears itself more quickly, leaving behind a space of calm awareness. The deeper truth hidden in this protocol is this: thoughts are not who you are. They are temporary marks written by experience, by emotion, by memory. They may feel permanent in the moment, but they are always erasable. You are not the chalk. You are the board itself, wide, clear, and unbroken no matter how many marks are placed upon it. So tonight, when you find yourself tangled in an echoing thought, don't argue with it. Don't try to push it away with force. Instead, picture it written down. See it clearly. Then, slowly, begin to erase it. With each breath, let more of it dissolve, until all that remains is silence. Rest in the empty space you've created. Feel the relief of a clean slate, and let that silence carry you into sleep. The thought eraser protocol is more than a visualization. It's a reminder that your mind is never trapped. No matter how stubborn a thought feels, it can always be erased. And once it's gone, you remember the truth. Peace is not something you have to create. It's what remains when the board is clear. Mental noise cancellation. The mind is rarely silent. Even when the world around you is quiet, your inner world hums with activity. Thoughts, worries, memories, and plans pile on top of each other until it feels like being in a crowded room where everyone is talking at once. This constant chatter is what I call mental noise. It doesn't always scream, but it's always there. A background hum of unfinished tasks, old regrets, and future fears. And the louder that inner noise becomes, the harder it is to relax, to focus, or to fall asleep. That's where the practice of mental noise cancellation comes in. It's a technique that teaches you to quiet the inner crowd, to mute the unnecessary voices, and to restore silence within. Think about noise-cancelling headphones. They don't eliminate sound by fighting it directly. Instead, they create an opposite frequency, a counterwave, that neutralizes the noise. The result is not complete emptiness, but a calm stillness, where distracting sounds no longer dominate. Mental noise cancellation works in a similar way. Instead of struggling against every thought, you create an inner counterbalance, a rhythm, an awareness or a visualization that neutralizes the chaos. Picture Daniel, who tries to fall asleep but keeps hearing the chatter in his head. Did I lock the door? I need to answer that email tomorrow. What if I forgot to pay that bill? What did she really mean when she said that? The noise grows louder the more he tries to silence it. Tonight he tries a new approach. He imagines every thought as a sound wave echoing through his mind. Then he imagines an equal and opposite wave, perfectly aligned, washing over the noise. As the waves meet, the chatter begins to cancel itself out, leaving behind quiet. For the first time in days, his mind feels soft, like a room where everyone has finally gone home. There are many ways to practice mental noise cancellation. Some people use breathing as their counterwave, focusing so deeply on the rhythm of inhale and exhale that it cancels out the chatter. Others imagine a soft, steady hum like the sound of ocean waves that drowns out the smaller voices. Some even picture their thoughts as radio signals, and with each exhale, they turn the dial lower until the static disappears. The form doesn't matter. What matters is the shift, from fighting the noise to neutralizing it. This practice is powerful because the more you fight your thoughts, the louder they grow. Anxiety feeds on resistance, but when you introduce an opposite rhythm, a steady breath, a calm image, a visualized sound wave, your nervous system interprets it as harmony. The brain begins to quiet itself, not through force but through resonance. Over time, mental noise cancellation becomes second nature. During the day, when stress builds, you can close your eyes for a moment, focus on your breath and let the chatter cancel itself out. At night, when echoes keep you awake, you can imagine your thoughts dissolving into a neutral hum. You stop trying to silence the mind through willpower and instead let the noise fade naturally into balance. The deeper truth of this practice is that silence is always underneath the noise. The chatter, no matter how loud, is temporary. Beneath it lies a vast stillness, the same stillness you feel in meditation, in deep rest, in moments of awe. Mental noise cancellation doesn't create silence. It reveals the silence that was already there. So tonight, when your head feels crowded and restless, don't argue with every thought. Don't demand silence. Instead, find your counterwave. Breathe deeply. Imagine the noise as ripples and picture them flattening into still water. Or imagine your thoughts as static on a radio, and with each breath turn the volume lower and lower until the channel clears. Allow the silence beneath the chatter to rise. Let it cradle you into calmness. Because silence isn't something you have to invent. It's always waiting beneath the noise. You just need to let it come forward. And once you feel it, you'll understand. The mind was never your enemy. It was just too loud, and you have always had the power to turn the volume down. Psychic anchor release. Sometimes the heaviest burdens we carry aren't visible. They don't sit on our backs or weigh down our arms. Instead, they live inside us, invisible anchors tied to our minds and emotions. These anchors are old memories, unresolved guilt, past failures, broken promises, and even identities we no longer fit into but can't seem to let go of. They pull us down, quietly but persistently, keeping us from rising into peace or moving forward freely. The technique known as psychic anchor release is about recognizing those invisible weights and consciously letting them go so you can float back to the surface of your own life. Think of a boat on water. No matter how strong the wind blows, if the anchor is buried deep in the sand below, the boat cannot move. It may tug against the rope, straining and creaking, but it will remain trapped in one place. In the same way, we may set intentions to grow, to heal, to change. But as long as psychic anchors remain tied to us, we struggle to move. Releasing them doesn't mean forgetting the past. It means cutting the rope that ties you to it, reclaiming the ability to drift freely into calmer waters. Take Rachel, for example. She's been carrying the weight of a failed relationship for years. On the surface, she's moved on. New job, new city, even new friends. But deep down, she feels tethered. Every time she tries to trust someone new, the old memory drags her back. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the loss. Tonight, she tries the psychic anchor release. She closes her eyes and imagines herself standing on a small boat in the middle of still water. Beneath her, she sees heavy chains tied to anchors, each one representing a memory or wound. One is labeled betrayal, another guilt, another fear of being hurt again. She places her hand on the rope, feels its weight, and then imagines cutting it. The anchor sinks, disappearing into the dark water below. For the first time, her boat begins to drift freely. She breathes deeply, feeling lighter, as though something that had been stuck inside her has finally loosened. This practice works because the brain and body are deeply influenced by symbolic action. By visualizing anchors and deliberately cutting them loose, you give your nervous system permission to release tension it has been holding for years. The mind often resists letting go logically, but it responds powerfully to imagery. The act of release, even in imagination, creates a real sense of freedom. There are many ways to adapt psychic anchor release. Some people write down their anchors, specific fears, regrets, or attachments, on pieces of paper and then burn them safely, watching the smoke rise as a symbol of release. Others visualize the anchors not as metal weights, but as knots in a rope, untying each one slowly until the line is free. Some imagine balloons tied to their wrists, each one carrying a burden, and then picture themselves letting them go, watching the weights float into the sky. The method doesn't matter. What matters is the act of consciously severing the tie between yourself and the weight that no longer serves you. The more you practice, the more you notice how many anchors you've been carrying without realizing it. Old insults you still replay in your mind, expectations from family that no longer fit who you are, guilt for mistakes you've already outgrown, even identities. The failure, the rejected one, the unworthy one, can act as anchors. When you release them, you rediscover something powerful. You are not your wounds. You are the one who chooses whether or not to keep holding them. Psychic anchor. Release also brings a deeper understanding. Heaviness is not inevitable. The anchors feel permanent only because we never stop to question them. But the moment you see them clearly, you realize that they are not attached to you. You are attached to them. And if you can tie a knot, you can also untie it. So tonight, if you feel weighed down by something invisible, try this. Close your eyes and imagine yourself standing on a boat. Look beneath you and see the anchors tied to chains, each one labeled with a burden you've been carrying. Touch them gently, acknowledge them, and then, with a breath, release them. Picture the anchors sinking away, vanishing into the depths. Watch your boat drift freely across the water. Feel the lightness spread through your chest, your shoulders, your mind. Because the truth is, you were never meant to stay anchored in the same place forever. You are meant to move, to grow, to drift into new horizons. And once you release the psychic anchors, you'll realize that freedom was always waiting for you, just beneath the surface. Cognitive peripheral vision. Most of the time, when people think, they use a kind of mental spotlight. The mind narrows its focus onto one idea, one worry, one memory, or one fear, and shines all its energy there. It's useful when you're solving problems or concentrating on a task, but when anxiety, regret, or overthinking takes over, this spotlight becomes a trap. The more you focus on one painful thought, the larger it seems. It consumes your awareness until you can't see anything else. The practice of cognitive peripheral vision is about widening that spotlight, expanding your mental field so that no single thought dominates. It's a technique that teaches you to shift from narrow, rigid attention to broad, spacious awareness, giving your mind room to breathe. Think about physical vision. If you stare only at one point in front of you, everything else fades into the background. Your body becomes tense, your eyes strain, and your awareness feels smaller. But when you soften your gaze and let your peripheral vision open, you suddenly see more of the world. Colors, shapes, and movement appear at the edges. Your body relaxes. You feel less trapped, more spacious. The same principle applies to thought. By practicing cognitive peripheral vision, you stop staring at one idea like it's the only thing that exists. And instead, you allow your awareness to expand and hold many things lightly. Take Alex, for example. He's lying in bed, obsessing about a mistake he made at work. His mental spotlight is fixed on the moment, the awkward silence after he spoke, the look on his boss's face, the wave of embarrassment. His chest tightens as the thought loops. But tonight, he tries cognitive peripheral vision. He closes his eyes and imagines his thoughts like objects in a vast room. Instead of staring at the mistake in the center, he softens his awareness to notice the edges. Other thoughts appear: the memory of what he ate for dinner, the sound of the fan, the rhythm of his breath. Suddenly, the mistake is no longer the entire room. It's just one object among many. His focus expands. His body relaxes. The thought loses its grip. This works because attention and anxiety are directly linked. When attention narrows, the brain interprets it as danger, as if you're facing a predator and need to focus on survival. But when attention widens, the body interprets it as safety. It signals, I am not trapped, I can see more, I am safe enough to relax. Practicing this shift teaches the nervous system to step out of fight or flight mode and back into calm awareness. There are many ways to practice cognitive peripheral vision. One method is sensory expansion. Instead of focusing only on your racing thought, notice multiple sensations at once: the air on your skin, the pressure of the mattress, the background sounds of the room. Another is mental expansion. Instead of clinging to one worry, invite harmless thoughts into your awareness. What the sky looked like today, the face of an old friend, the sound of laughter. Don't cling to any of them. Just let them float at the edges, reminding you that your mind is bigger than any single fear. The beauty of this technique is that it doesn't require you to silence your thoughts. It doesn't demand that you stop thinking about the worry. Instead, it puts that worry into context. It shows you that even when one thought feels enormous, it is never the whole picture. The spotlight is not the only way to see. The edges exist too, and often, the edges are where calmness lives. Over time, cognitive peripheral vision trains you to live with more spacious awareness. During stressful conversations, you'll notice the details around you, the light in the room, the sound of someone breathing, which keeps you from being consumed by fear. During anxious nights, you'll soften your mental gaze, allowing your mind to drift into broader, calmer awareness. Even in moments of pain, you'll remember, this thought is not all of me. It is only one part of the field. There is also a deeper spiritual truth here. Narrow attention feels like ego, small, defensive, always under threat. Wide attention feels like awareness itself, open, vast, unbothered by single disturbances. When you practice cognitive peripheral vision, you step into that wider self, the part of you that can hold everything without being consumed by anything. So tonight, if you feel trapped in a single thought, don't fight it. Don't force it away. Instead, widen your awareness. Notice the edges. Let your focus soften, as if your mind had a horizon. Watch how the thought shrinks when surrounded by space. Feel how your body relaxes when you are no longer staring into mental darkness, but gazing across a wide, calm field. Because the truth is, you were never trapped inside that one thought. The spotlight only made it seem that way. The moment you expand your vision, you remember. The mind is vast, the self is spacious, and no single thought can ever define you. Inner dialogue, scrambling. Every person has an inner voice. It's the constant stream of thoughts running through the mind, the voice that comments on your actions, repeats conversations, predicts outcomes, and sometimes criticizes every choice you make. For some, this inner dialogue is encouraging and kind, but for many it becomes harsh, judgmental, and repetitive. When left unchecked, it can trap you in endless cycles of self-doubt, regret, or fear. The technique of inner dialogue scrambling is designed to break that cycle. It interrupts the voice inside your head, scrambles its rhythm, and dismantles its power until it no longer dominates your mind. Think of a song that gets stuck in your head. At first it might be tolerable, but as it repeats endlessly, it becomes irritating. You can't escape it. The same thing happens with inner dialogue. A sentence or phrase echoes again and again, building emotional weight each time. But if you scramble the song, change its pitch, reverse its words, slow it down, or turn it into nonsense, it loses its power. Suddenly, it's not irritating anymore. It's silly, harmless, even laughable. Inner dialogue. Scrambling works the same way, but with your own thoughts. Take Mia, for example. Her inner voice constantly tells her, "You're not good enough. You'll fail. Everyone is judging you." These words echo in her mind whenever she faces a challenge. Tonight, she tries inner dialogue scrambling. She closes her eyes and imagines that sentence, "You're not good enough." But instead of letting it play as usual, she alters it. She imagines the voice saying it in a cartoonish squeak like a chipmunk. Then she slows it down, dragging out each word until it sounds ridiculous. Finally, she jumbles the letters, turning "you're not good enough" into gibberish. Suddenly, the phrase that once felt heavy now feels absurd. She even laughs at it. And with that laughter, the power of the inner critic dissolves. This technique works because the brain doesn't only respond to meaning, it also responds to sound, rhythm, and form. By altering the way the inner voice speaks, you change the way your brain interprets it. Instead of seeing the phrase as absolute truth, your mind recognizes it as just a sound, a pattern, something malleable. The emotional sting is stripped away. What was once a command becomes nothing more than noise. There are many ways to practice inner dialogue scrambling. Some people imagine their inner critic's voice as coming from a silly character, like a clown, a cartoon animal, or a broken robot. Others scramble the words visually, picturing them as letters that twist, melt, or rearrange themselves into nonsense. Some people even imagine the critical phrase being sung to the tune of "Happy Birthday" or another silly song. The goal isn't to deny the thought, but to disrupt its seriousness. When you scramble it, you rob it of authority. Over time, this practice transforms your relationship with your inner dialogue. Instead of being enslaved by every harsh thought, you learn to see them for what they are, habits of the mind, not truths about your identity. You begin to laugh at your inner critic, to strip its voice of intimidation, and to reclaim control over your inner space. The once powerful loop becomes weak, fragile, and unconvincing. The deeper lesson here is profound. Thoughts are not commands, they are suggestions. They only gain power when you take them seriously. By scrambling your inner dialogue, you prove to yourself that thoughts are flexible, that the same sentence can feel heavy or harmless depending on how you frame it. This realization creates freedom. It teaches you that you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that hears them. So tonight, if your inner voice won't stop repeating something cruel, don't argue with it. Don't try to prove it wrong. Instead, scramble it, change its pitch, turn it into gibberish. Imagine it sung in a silly tune. Picture the words melting or shattering into fragments. Watch how quickly its weight dissolves. Because once you see how easily a thought can be scrambled, you realize it never had real power. It was only ever noise. And beneath that noise, there is always silence, the place where your true self resides, untouched by the chatter of the inner voice. Identity fragmentation. Who are you? It sounds like a simple question, but when you really stop and think about it, the answer begins to blur. Are you the same person you were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, even yesterday? The truth is, your identity isn't fixed. It's a collection of roles, memories, beliefs, and labels that constantly shift with time. Sometimes, though, this natural fluidity can fracture. Parts of yourself get split off, hidden, or denied. This is what we call identity fragmentation, the experience of feeling divided within yourself, as though different versions of you are pulling in different directions, leaving you restless, conflicted, and disconnected. Think of a mirror shattering. Each shard still reflects a part of your face, but none of them shows the whole picture. Identity fragmentation works the same way. Maybe one part of you is the confident achiever, while another part still carries the wounded child. Maybe one piece of you wants success, while another secretly fears it. Maybe one side of you is kind and giving, while another is angry and resentful. All these pieces coexist, but when they don't communicate, you feel torn apart. You may lie awake at night, feeling like 2 or 3 different people sharing the same body. Take Sophia, for example. By day, she is a professional, focused, ambitious, always in control. But at night, another part of her surfaces, the insecure voice that remembers every mistake she's ever made, the scared teenager who still fears rejection. These fragments clash, leaving her drained. She feels like she can't reconcile the 2 versions of herself. Tonight, she tries working with identity fragmentation. She imagines her inner world as a round table. One by one, she invites her fragmented selves to sit. The confident adult, the wounded child, the angry teenager, the perfectionist, the dreamer. She listens to each one. She realizes they all carry truths. The child needs safety. The teenager wants freedom. The adult seeks respect. For the first time, instead of being pulled apart, she sees them as parts of a larger whole. This practice works because the mind is not one single voice. It's a community. When fragments are denied, they rebel, pulling your energy into conflict. But when you acknowledge them, listen to them, and integrate them, they lose their destructive edge. You no longer feel like you're battling yourself. You feel like you're leading yourself. There are many ways to work with identity fragmentation. One method is dialogue journaling, writing from the perspective of your different parts and letting them speak. Another is visualization, picturing your inner selves meeting, talking, and reconciling. Some people even use body awareness, noticing how different selves show up physically. Tight shoulders, shallow breath, clenched fists, and gently allowing those parts to release. The method doesn't matter. What matters is the act of honoring all your fragments instead of rejecting them. The deeper truth of this practice is powerful. Fragmentation isn't a flaw. It's the mind's way of coping. Each fragment was born to protect you at some stage of life. The inner critic once tried to keep you safe from failure. The fearful child once kept you cautious in dangerous situations. The angry voice once gave you strength when you were powerless. When you recognize this, you stop treating your fragments as enemies and begin to see them as allies that need integration. Over time, identity fragmentation becomes less of a battle and more of a reunion. You learn to hold all your pieces in one awareness, to let them coexist without tearing you apart. You become whole not by erasing your fragments, but by weaving them together into a fuller, richer self. So tonight, if you feel divided, if you hear different voices pulling you in opposite directions, don't panic, don't silence them. Instead, gather them. Imagine sitting at a table with all yourselves. Let each one speak. Listen without judgment. And then remind yourself that they all belong to the same whole. Because the truth is, you are not broken. You are a mosaic. And every shard, no matter how sharp or scattered, is part of the picture of you. Once you accept that, the fragmentation begins to fade. What's left is not conflict but harmony, the recognition that you were always whole, even in pieces. Mental frequency shift. The human mind is like a radio. It constantly broadcasts thoughts, emotions, and inner chatter across different frequencies. Sometimes you tune into stations of joy, creativity, and clarity. Other times, without realizing it, you find yourself locked on frequencies of worry, fear, or anger. These negative frequencies can dominate your entire mental landscape, leaving you restless, distracted, and drained. The practice of mental frequency shift is about learning to retune your mind, to change the channel, so to speak, so that instead of being stuck in noise and static, you find the clear signal of peace and focus. Think about how a radio works. If you leave it on a bad station full of static, eventually the noise blends into the background. You stop noticing how unpleasant it is, even though it shapes your mood. The mind functions in much the same way. When you're tuned into a negative frequency, you may not even realize it at first. The low-level hum of stress feels normal. But once you deliberately shift the dial, the difference becomes undeniable. Clarity, calmness, and energy return. Take James as an example. He wakes up every morning with a constant stream of anxious thoughts. What if today goes wrong? What if I mess up? What if they don't like me? He feels trapped in this frequency, unable to escape. But one evening, he tries the mental frequency shift. He closes his eyes, imagines his mind as an old radio, and visualizes a dial. The anxious thoughts hum loudly, like static on a bad channel. Slowly, he imagines turning the dial. With each small shift, the static softens. New sounds begin to emerge. Laughter, music, calm voices. Finally, he locks onto a new channel, one of stillness. For the first time in days, the noise fades into silence. His chest feels lighter. His mind feels clear. This works because the brain is highly responsive to suggestion and imagery. When you visualize changing your frequency, your nervous system follows. Thoughts may not disappear instantly, but the act of shifting gives your mind permission to disengage from one pattern and adopt another. It's not about forcing silence. It's about choosing which broadcast you want to tune into. There are many ways to practice mental frequency shift. Some people use sound, listening to calming music, ocean waves, or binaural beats to change their inner rhythm. Others use breath, slowing their inhalations and exhalations until their body tunes into a calmer state. Visualization works powerfully as well. Imagine yourself turning a dial, pressing a button, or even stepping into a new room with a different atmosphere. The image doesn't matter. What matters is the sensation of transition, of leaving one mental channel and entering another. The deeper truth is that you are never trapped on one frequency. It may feel like anxiety, anger, or sadness has taken over completely, but this is only because your attention has locked onto that station. Beneath it, countless other frequencies exist. Joy, creativity, curiosity, peace. By learning to shift deliberately, you remind yourself that your mind has options. You are not a prisoner of static. You are the one holding the dial. Over time, mental frequency shift becomes second nature. In stressful situations, you'll notice when you're tuned into chaos and instinctively shift. At night, when your thoughts won't stop replaying, you'll visualize changing the channel to stillness. During moments of inspiration, you'll learn how to fine-tune your focus to amplify creativity. Each time you practice, you strengthen the realization that your mental state is not fixed. It is fluid, and you have the power to adjust it. So tonight, if your mind feels like a noisy broadcast of fear and restlessness, don't fight it. Don't demand silence. Instead, picture yourself holding the dial of an old radio. Hear the static of your thoughts, and then slowly begin to shift. Each breath is a turn of the knob. Each exhale brings more clarity. Keep adjusting until the noise fades and you find the clear, steady signal of calm. Rest in that frequency. Let it wash over you. Because the truth is, you are not the static, you are not the noise, you are the tuner, the one who chooses which frequency to live in. And once you realize that, the power to change your inner world will always be in your hands. Future self-hypnosis. Every decision you make is guided by the person you believe you are right now. But what if you could borrow wisdom, strength, and clarity from the person you are becoming? What if you could step forward in time, meet your future self, and bring their guidance back into the present? This is the power of future self-hypnosis, a technique that allows you to mentally project yourself into the version of you who has already healed, grown, and achieved, so that their calmness and certainty become tools for your present struggles. The idea is simple but profound. Within you lives countless versions of yourself, the fearful one, the wounded one, the strong one, and the wiser one who hasn't yet arrived. When you connect with that future self, you tap into the part of your mind that already knows how to overcome the obstacles ahead. You bypass doubt and lean into trust. You stop asking, "Can I?" and start realizing, "I already have." Imagine Noah, who feels paralyzed with indecision. He's afraid to take a new job, worried he'll fail, anxious about leaving behind what's familiar. Tonight, he tries future self-hypnosis. He closes his eyes and slows his breathing. He imagines walking down a hallway with doors, each door representing a version of himself at different points in life. At the end of the hall, he sees one door glowing faintly, his future self. He opens it and steps inside. Sitting across from him is a calmer, older version of himself, someone who has already taken the leap, built the career, and survived the fears. He asks this future self, "What should I do?" The answer comes gently, not as command, but as knowing. Trust yourself. You'll be okay. The fear is temporary. The growth is permanent. Noah opens his eyes, and though nothing around him has changed, everything inside him feels different. This works because the subconscious mind doesn't strictly distinguish between imagination and reality. By visualizing your future self vividly, you create a reference point for your brain, a new identity to align with. The wisdom of the future self feels real because, in a way, it is. It's a projection of the potential already inside you. Hypnosis simply opens the door to it. There are many ways to practice future self-hypnosis. Some people prefer guided visualizations, imagining themselves walking into a future home, seeing how they live, what they wear, how they carry themselves. Others imagine a direct conversation, asking questions and listening to the answers. Some write letters to their present self from the perspective of the future. Each method strengthens the bridge between who you are now and who you are becoming. Over time, this practice transforms fear into clarity. Instead of asking, "And what if I fail?" you begin asking, "How did I succeed?" The question shifts from fear to guidance. You stop viewing your future as something distant and uncertain and begin treating it as a mentor already alive within you. And slowly your choices begin to align with that future self, pulling you toward the version of life you want to inhabit. The deeper truth is that the future isn't waiting for you passively. It's shaped by the choices you make in the present. Future self-hypnosis helps you access the wisdom of that trajectory before it fully unfolds. It reminds you that the strength you long for isn't missing. It's already inside you, waiting to be realized. So tonight, if you feel lost, close your eyes. Picture a door at the end of a quiet path. Behind it is the person you are becoming. Wiser, calmer, free. Open the door. Sit with them. Ask them what they've learned. Ask them what mistakes no longer matter. Ask them what you should remember right now. Then breathe deeply and carry their answers back with you into the present. Because the truth is, your future self is not a stranger. It is you, evolved, expanded, unburdened by the fears of today. And every time you connect with them, you bring a piece of that wisdom into your life now. That is the gift of future self-hypnosis, realizing that the person you wish to become already lives within you, waiting to guide you home. Infinite regression exercise. Have you ever noticed how one thought leads to another and then another, until you've wandered so far from the original question that you don't even know how you got there? This endless chain of thoughts can be frustrating, but when directed with purpose, it becomes one of the most profound tools of self-discovery. The infinite regression exercise is a method of repeatedly asking, "And before that? And what came before that? And why does this matter?" until you trace your way down to the very roots of your identity, beliefs, and fears. It is not about finding a single answer. It is about peeling back layers, one after the other, to discover the foundations of who you are. Think of it like Russian nesting dolls. On the surface, you see the outer figure, brightly painted, carefully crafted. But when you open it, you find another doll inside, and inside that another, and another. Each layer reveals something smaller, deeper, closer to the core. Infinite regression works the same way with the mind. You begin with one thought, belief, or fear, and by continuously asking what lies beneath it, you uncover the hidden structures that shape your life. Take Ethan, for example. He feels a deep anxiety about speaking in public. If asked why, he might say, "I don't want to embarrass myself." That's the surface doll. But if he asks, "And why don't I want to embarrass myself?" the answer comes, "Because people will think I'm stupid." That's another layer. If he asks again, "And why does it matter if people think I'm stupid?" he finds, "Because then I won't be respected." Another layer. Again, "And why do I need respect?" the answer, because without it, I feel worthless. In only a few steps, Ethan has moved from fear of public speaking to the much deeper wound of self-worth. That is the power of infinite regression. This exercise works because the mind often hides its true fears beneath surface-level excuses. We tell ourselves we're afraid of failure, but beneath that, we're afraid of rejection. Beneath that, we're afraid of being unloved. Beneath that, we may even fear non-existence, the ultimate silence of being forgotten. By regressing step by step, you stop treating symptoms and begin addressing causes. There are many ways to practice infinite regression. Some people use journaling, writing a question at the top of the page, "Why am I afraid of this?" and answering it, then repeating the question for each answer until they reach the root. Others use meditation, sitting quietly and asking themselves again and again, peeling away layers of thought. Some use visualization, picturing their mind as a staircase, descending with each question into deeper and deeper chambers. However you approach it, the method is the same. Keep asking, keep peeling, keep going deeper. At first, the process can feel uncomfortable. The deeper you go, the more raw the answers become. You may stumble upon childhood wounds, unmet needs, or truths you've long avoided. But this discomfort is not punishment, it's liberation. By uncovering the roots, you gain power over them. Once Ethan sees that his real fear is not public speaking, but the belief that he is worthless without respect, he can begin to heal at that level. He can challenge that belief. He can replace it with a deeper truth. I have worth, even if others don't approve. The deeper lesson of infinite regression is that identity itself is layered illusion. The you who speaks today is built upon beliefs, and those beliefs are built upon memories, and those memories are built upon interpretations that may or may not be true. By tracing back through the layers, you discover that much of what you thought was fixed is fluid, and if it's fluid, it can change. So tonight, if a thought keeps you restless, try the infinite regression exercise. Write it down, then ask, and what lies beneath this? And why does it matter? Keep peeling until you feel the sting of recognition, until you reach a place where the answers are no longer about circumstance, but about identity. Sit with that truth, breathe into it, and know that by bringing it into the light, you've already begun to loosen its grip. Because the truth is, most of our struggles aren't about what we think they are. They are echoes of something deeper, something hidden. Infinite regression doesn't solve these struggles instantly, but it shows you the path, the staircase into the basement of the mind, where true healing begins. And once you've seen the root, you can no longer be fooled by the leaves. Subconscious password reset. Every one of us carries hidden codes inside our mind, invisible passwords that unlock the way we think, feel, and act. These passwords are not literal words or numbers, they are patterns. A certain tone of voice, a memory, a trigger, or a belief can act like a secret code, instantly opening a door in your subconscious. Some of these codes serve us well. They remind us to stay safe, to push forward, to keep growing. But many of them are outdated. They were set long ago, often in childhood, and no longer fit the life we are trying to live today. That is where the practice of subconscious password reset comes in, a technique for identifying the codes that no longer serve you and rewriting them so that your inner system aligns with who you are now, not who you used to be. Think of your subconscious like a locked phone. Every time you want to access it, you enter a passcode. But what if the code was created years ago when you were still a child? Maybe it says, "To be loved, I must be perfect." Or, "I am only safe if I stay silent." Or, "I can't trust anyone." Each time life presses the right combination of triggers, the subconscious unlocks these old programs and they run automatically. You may not even realize it's happening. You just feel the result: anxiety, fear, hesitation, or self-sabotage. Resetting the password means rewriting the code. It means saying, that old system doesn't run my life anymore. Here is the new access point: strength, calmness, trust. Consider Olivia. As a child, whenever she expressed herself, she was told she was too much, too loud, too emotional. Over time, her subconscious stored a password: to stay safe, stay small. As an adult, this program runs every time she wants to speak up in meetings or share her ideas. She hesitates, shrinks, and silences herself, not realizing it's an old code controlling her. One night, she practices subconscious password reset. She writes down the phrase, to stay safe, stay small. She looks at it closely and asks, is this really true anymore? The answer is no. She replaces it with a new code. My voice is valuable. Speaking up creates safety and growth. She repeats this new phrase while imagining herself in moments of courage. Over time, the new password takes hold. The old one loses power. This technique works because the subconscious responds strongly to repetition, imagery, and emotional charge. When you pair a new belief with vivid visualization and deep feeling, the mind accepts it as a new program. Think of it like updating old software. You don't delete the past. You simply install an upgrade that works better for your life now. There are many methods to practice subconscious password reset. Some people use affirmations, not as empty words, but as emotionally charged new codes. Others use guided visualization, closing their eyes, imagining a giant lock on a vault inside their mind, and consciously typing in a new password of strength, worth, or courage. Some people even ritualize it, writing the old password on paper, tearing it up, and writing a new one to replace it. The process doesn't matter as much as the intention: to stop living by codes written long ago and to begin living by the ones you choose. At first, the old passwords will try to reassert themselves. You may notice your mind slipping back into old phrases like, I'm not good enough, or I have to earn love. This doesn't mean you've failed. It simply means the old code is still stored in memory. Each time it appears, you reset. You speak the new code. You embody it. Eventually, the subconscious accepts the new password as the default. The deeper lesson of this practice is that most of us are still running on childhood programming. Rules and beliefs written by parents, teachers, or past experiences, codes we never consciously chose. Subconscious password reset is your chance to take ownership, to say, I no longer live under someone else's script. I write my own. So tonight, if you notice yourself shrinking, hesitating, or feeling trapped, pause. Ask yourself, what password just unlocked this reaction? What old code is running? Then imagine holding the keyboard of your subconscious in your hands. Delete the old code. Write a new one. Something simple, empowering, alive. Breathe into it. Repeat it until it feels like yours. Because the truth is, you are not broken. You are not trapped by the past. You are simply using outdated access codes. And the moment you reset them, you reclaim control. You remind yourself that you are the one who sets the passwords of your mind, and no one else. Emotional desaturation. Emotions are like colors. Some days they are soft pastels, gentle, manageable, easy to hold. Other days they are neon lights, too bright, too loud, overwhelming to the point that they consume every corner of your mind. When emotions become too saturated, they distort reality. Anger turns into rage, sadness becomes despair, anxiety becomes panic. You can no longer see the situation clearly because the intensity of the feeling has painted everything in the same overwhelming shade. Emotional desaturation is a technique that helps you soften these colors, draining just enough intensity from the emotion so you can step back, breathe, and respond with clarity instead of drowning in reaction. Think of a photograph. When the saturation is turned all the way up, the picture looks harsh. Reds bleed into oranges. Blues scream against yellows. Every detail is exaggerated. It's exhausting to look at. But when you lower the saturation, the same picture becomes calmer, easier to process. You can notice details that were hidden before. Emotional desaturation works the same way for the mind. It doesn't erase your feelings. It softens them to a level where they no longer blind you. Take Daniel as an example. He's sitting in traffic, already late for work. A driver cuts him off and instantly, rage floods his body. His hands grip the wheel, his heart races, his thoughts scream, how dare they, people are so selfish. In that moment, the emotion is at full saturation. Every part of him is tinted red with anger. But then, He remembers emotional desaturation. He takes a deep breath and imagines a slider in his mind, like the one on a photo editing app. He sees the anger as a bright red filter covering his entire vision. Slowly he slides the bar down. The red softens. The emotion is still there, but it's muted. The road no longer looks like a battlefield. He feels his shoulders relax. He can think again. He can drive in peace. This practice works because emotions live both in the body and the imagination. When you visualize yourself reducing their color intensity, your nervous system receives the signal to calm down. You're not suppressing the feeling. You're regulating it, giving yourself room to respond instead of react. There are many ways to practice emotional desaturation. Some people use visualization, picturing their emotion as a liquid color spreading through their body, then gradually draining it into the ground or diluting it with light until it becomes softer. Others use breath as the slider. With each exhale, imagining the saturation decreasing, watching the emotional color fade a little more. Some use sound, imagining the emotion as loud static noise and turning down the volume until it's just background hum. The method doesn't matter. What matters is the shift from overwhelm to balance. At first, this may feel strange. The mind is used to either drowning in emotion or trying to suppress it completely. Emotional desaturation offers a middle path. It teaches you to honor the feeling. Yes, I am angry. Yes, I am sad. Yes, I am afraid. But I don't need to feel it at 100% volume. I can bring it down to 40%, to a place where I can breathe, think, and choose how to act. The deeper truth of this technique is that intensity doesn't equal truth. Just because an emotion feels overwhelming doesn't mean the situation deserves that level of reaction. Often, the saturation comes not from the present moment but from past echoes, old wounds and memories pouring themselves into today's feelings. By lowering the saturation, you separate the now from the then. You reclaim the ability to see clearly. Over time, emotional desaturation becomes second nature. During conflict, you'll notice the color of anger flooding in and immediately begin to slide it down. During moments of sadness, you'll soften the heaviness until it becomes bearable. Even in anxiety, you'll recognize the neon brightness of fear and dim it until it becomes a manageable glow. The emotions remain, but they no longer control you. So tonight, if your feelings feel too loud, too sharp, too overwhelming, try this. Close your eyes. Imagine your emotion as a vivid color filling your mind. See the slider in your hand. Slowly move it down, breath by breath. Watch the color fade into balance. Notice how your body relaxes as the saturation softens. Because the truth is, you are not meant to drown in neon storms of emotion. You are meant to feel, yes, but also to see clearly. Emotional desaturation gives you that clarity, the ability to honor your feelings without letting them blind you. And in that balance, you discover freedom. Intentional forgetting method. The human mind clings to memories. Some are beautiful and comforting, but others are heavy. Mistakes, betrayals, regrets, or moments of pain that replay again and again. These memories live like ghosts, haunting the present, shaping decisions and clouding joy. Most people believe forgetting is passive, something that happens naturally over time. But the truth is, forgetting can also be intentional. The intentional forgetting method is about consciously releasing memories that no longer serve you, not by denying that they happened, but by choosing to stop carrying their weight every single day. Think of your mind like a bookshelf. Over the years, it becomes packed with books. Some are inspiring stories, worth reading again. Others are painful chapters that you don't want to revisit, but somehow keep falling off the shelf, forcing you to read them once more. Eventually, the shelf becomes so crowded that there's no space for new stories. Intentional forgetting is the act of taking those old books, acknowledging that you've read them and carefully placing them in a box, not destroying them, but storing them away so they no longer block your growth. Take Elena, for example. She often replays the memory of a friendship that ended badly. Every time she thinks about it, she feels the same sting of betrayal, as if it happened yesterday. The memory colors her trust in others and makes her hesitant to form new connections. Tonight, she tries the intentional forgetting method. She closes her eyes and imagines that memory as a photograph in her hands. She looks at it one last time, acknowledging the pain it holds, then imagines placing it into a small box. She locks the box, puts it on a high shelf and steps back. The memory still exists, but it is no longer in her hands. It is no longer something she has to carry every day. This practice works because memory is not just storage, it's activation. Every time you recall a painful event, you strengthen its pathways in the brain, making it easier for the memory to surface again. By choosing to stop revisiting it, by symbolically putting it away, you weaken those pathways. Over time, the memory loses its grip. There are many ways to practice intentional forgetting. Visualization is powerful. Imagine your memory as an object, then place it into a vault, a river, or even a balloon that drifts into the sky. Writing can also help. Write down the memory in detail, then seal it away in an envelope or burn it safely as a ritual of release. Some people even use a physical gesture, like brushing their hands off after recalling the memory, as a way of signaling to the subconscious, "This is done, I choose to release it." At first you may resist. A part of you may feel that forgetting means dishonoring the experience or letting someone off the hook. But intentional forgetting is not about denial or erasure. It's about liberation. It means saying, "Yes, this happened, but I refuse to let it be the lens through which I see every tomorrow." The deeper truth is that memory is selective. We are constantly forgetting things every day. Faces, names, small details. The brain lets them go because they are no longer useful. Intentional forgetting is simply applying that same principle consciously to memories that hold you back. You're not erasing history. You're choosing not to let history imprison you. Over time, this method changes the way you carry yourself. Old regrets no longer echo as loudly. Past betrayals stop shaping every interaction. You make space for new stories, new people, and new joys because the shelf of your mind is no longer cluttered with the weight of what you no longer need. So tonight, if an old memory keeps replaying, try this. Close your eyes. Hold it in your mind like an object. Look at it one last time, acknowledge it, and then imagine putting it away, into a box, a vault, a river, the wind. Say to yourself, "I choose to remember differently. I choose to move forward." Because the truth is, memory is not a prison unless you keep holding the keys. Intentional forgetting gives you permission to put them down, to step into the present unchained, unburdened, and free. Disguised affirmation. Loop affirmations are powerful. A simple phrase repeated often enough can shape the subconscious, building confidence, strength, and resilience. But there's a problem. When affirmations feel fake or forced, the mind rejects them. If you say, "I am confident," while secretly drowning in doubt, a voice inside may whisper back, "No, you're not." Instead of building you up, the affirmation collapses under the weight of disbelief. That's why the disguised affirmation loop exists. It hides affirmations inside ordinary thoughts, weaving them into patterns your subconscious accepts naturally, without triggering resistance. Think of it like sneaking medicine into a child's drink. If you hand the child a bitter pill, they spit it out. But if you mix the medicine into juice, they swallow it without noticing. The disguised affirmation loop works the same way. Instead of confronting your doubts directly, you wrap the affirmation inside questions, stories, or subtle statements that feel true enough to bypass resistance. Over time, these disguised affirmations loop through your mind, reshaping your beliefs without the usual battle of true or false. Take Marcus, for example. He struggles with self-worth. Every time he tries to say, "I deserve love," a harsh inner critic interrupts, "No, you don't." So he changes his approach. Instead of repeating the affirmation outright, he disguises it as a question. "Why is it becoming easier for me to believe I deserve love?" The critic has no answer. The question feels plausible, even curious. His subconscious accepts it. Soon he adds another disguise. "Every day, I notice more signs that I am worthy." These are not declarations, but gentle loops of suggestion. Over time, the disguised affirmations repeat often enough that they bypass his resistance and begin to sink in. This method works because the subconscious is not logical, it is suggestible. Direct statements trigger the logical mind, which argues back, but disguised affirmations enter quietly, bypassing defense. Questions like, "What if I succeed?" or "Why does confidence feel more natural today?" nudge the subconscious to search for answers, pulling you toward the desired belief instead of fighting it. There are many ways to create a disguised affirmation loop. One is through why questions. Instead of "I am strong," you ask, "Why do I feel stronger each day?" Another is through future pacing. "I wonder how much easier this will feel next week." Some people use third-person framing. "He's becoming more confident every day," as though describing someone else, until the subconscious realizes that he is you. The disguise can be subtle, but the loop is what matters. Repetition that becomes automatic, reshaping thought patterns over time. At first, the skeptic inside you might still whisper doubts. But here's the secret. Disguised affirmations don't need to be believed 100% to work. They only need to slip past the inner critic often enough to begin building new pathways. Each time the loop runs, the brain adjusts slightly. And like water carving stone, the repetition creates lasting change. The deeper truth of this practice is that transformation doesn't always come from head-on confrontation. Sometimes it comes from subtlety. The mind resists force but responds to suggestion. The disguised affirmation loop teaches you that your inner critic is not the enemy to be defeated. It is simply a gatekeeper. And when you learn to disguise your affirmations, you walk past the gate with ease. Over time, these disguised loops reshape your inner world. Instead of repeating, "I can't do this," you'll find yourself asking, "Why does this feel easier today than yesterday?" Instead of saying, "I am unworthy," you'll start noticing the disguised loop whispering, "Every day I see more signs of my worth." Slowly, gently, the subconscious accepts these truths, and they become part of your identity. So tonight, if affirmations feel fake or if your mind keeps rejecting them, try disguising them. Wrap them in curiosity, hide them in questions, speak them as though they are already unfolding. Let them loop quietly in your thoughts until they no longer feel foreign but natural. Because the truth is, the subconscious doesn't care how the seed is planted. It only cares that it is planted at all. And once it takes root, the belief grows, whether the critic approves or not. That is the power of the disguised affirmation loop. Transformation through gentle suggestion, until your mind begins to believe in the strength it always had. Mental cinema pause. Your mind is like a movie theater. All day long it plays scenes, memories from the past, predictions of the future, imagined arguments, fears, daydreams. Some of these films inspire you, but others overwhelm you. Dramatic replays of regret or horror stories of what might go wrong. The trouble is, most people forget they are the audience. They sit frozen in their seats, forced to watch whatever their mind projects on the screen. The mental cinema pause is a technique that reminds you of your power. It teaches you to grab the remote, hit pause, and step back from the endless reel of mental movies so that you no longer drown in them, but observe them with calm clarity. Think of a time you've been caught in a spiral of thoughts. You replay a conversation that hurt you, imagining all the things you should have said. You fast forward to a future situation, picturing disaster after disaster. The movie never ends, and the more you watch, the more real it feels. But when you pause, truly pause, something remarkable happens. The film freezes. You see it not as reality, but as projection. And in that gap, you regain choice. Take Maya, for example. She's lying in bed, unable to sleep. Her mind keeps showing her the same film. Her boss criticizing her at work, her colleagues judging her, her career collapsing. The scenes loop endlessly. Then she remembers the mental cinema pause. She imagines herself holding a remote in her hand. She points it at the mental screen and presses pause. Instantly, the scene freezes. The boss's mouth is open mid-sentence, the colleagues frozen in their stares. Maya exhales. She realizes, this is just a movie my mind is playing. It is not happening now. The grip of fear loosens. Sleep returns. This technique works because the subconscious mind responds strongly to imagery. By visualizing thoughts as films rather than absolute truths, you create distance. The act of pausing interrupts the cycle, breaking the chain of emotional reaction. Instead of being trapped inside the movie, you step into the role of the director. There are many ways to practice mental cinema pause. Some people literally imagine holding a remote, pressing buttons to pause, rewind, or even mute the mental film. Others picture themselves inside a theater, standing up and walking out mid-scene, leaving the screen to play to an empty room. Some even imagine dimming the projector light until the movie fades into darkness. The key is to remember that your mind is projecting, and projection can always be paused. At first, the pause may only last a moment. The film will try to restart, but each time you hit pause, you strengthen the muscle of awareness. Over time, you'll find it easier to interrupt spirals before they consume you. Instead of hours lost in rumination, you'll reclaim those moments for calm, clarity, and presence. The deeper truth of this technique is that thoughts are not commands. They are not laws. They are films, some borrowed from the past, some imagined for the future. They only have power when you sit silently in the theater and watch them as if they were real. The pause reminds you, I am not the movie, I am the one watching. So tonight, if your mind won't stop replaying scenes, try this. Close your eyes. Picture the film playing in front of you. Then hold the remote. Press pause. Freeze the frame. Notice the silence that follows. Breathe into that stillness. And in that moment, remember that you always have the power to stop the reel. Because the truth is, your thoughts will always create movies. But you are not condemned to watch them endlessly. With the mental cinema pause, you reclaim your role, not as a victim of projection, but as the director of your own mental theater. Psychological distance expansion. When something painful happens, the mind has a habit of zooming in. A harsh word, a mistake, a memory. It grows larger and larger until it fills your entire mental screen. The closer you are to it, the more overwhelming it feels. A single problem can look like an entire world. But what if you could step back? What if you could create distance, not by denying the experience, but by expanding the space between you and it? This is the essence of psychological distance expansion, a technique that teaches you to zoom out, to take a wider view, and to see your struggles not as the whole story, but as one small part of a much larger picture. Think of a painting. If you press your nose right up against the canvas, all you see are chaotic brush strokes. The colors blur, the shapes make no sense, and it feels messy, even meaningless. But the moment you step back, the strokes come together. You see the bigger image, the balance, the beauty. Life works the same way. When you're too close to a problem, it feels unbearable. But when you create distance, perspective returns. Take Aria, for example. She recently went through a breakup, and her pain feels endless. Every thought, every song, every memory drags her back into sadness. Her mind is pressed so tightly against the moment that she cannot see beyond it. One evening, she tries psychological distance expansion. She closes her eyes and imagines floating upward, as though rising above her life. At first, she sees only herself in her room, curled on her bed. Then she zooms higher, seeing her city, her country, the planet beneath her. Suddenly, her breakup feels smaller, not insignificant, but no longer infinite. She remembers that she is part of a larger story, one that stretches far beyond this single painful chapter. Relief washes over her. This works because the human brain exaggerates what it focuses on. When you are close to a problem, your emotions amplify it. But when you deliberately expand your perspective, the emotional charge weakens. You are not erasing the pain. You are balancing it with context. There are many ways to practice psychological distance expansion. Visualization is the most powerful. Imagine zooming out of your body like a camera, rising higher and higher until your pain becomes one small dot in a vast landscape. Journaling works as well. Write about your struggle, then write the same story from the perspective of your future self looking back 10 years later. Some people use time as distance, reminding themselves that what feels unbearable now will likely feel lighter in weeks, months, or years. Others use compassion as distance, imagining what advice they'd give a friend experiencing the same thing. Each method creates space, and in space, suffering loses some of its grip. At first, the closeness will pull you back. The problem will scream for attention, demanding to be the center of everything. But with practice, you'll learn to step away more easily. You'll begin to see that even the heaviest pain is not the entirety of life. It is a single frame in a much larger film. The deeper truth of this technique is that perspective is power. When you are trapped inside the small frame of your pain, it defines you. But when you expand distance, you remember that you are more than the problem. You are the observer of it, the one capable of rising above and seeing the whole picture. So tonight, if something feels unbearable, try this. Close your eyes. Imagine the problem as an image right in front of your face. Then, slowly, take a step back. Then another. Keep stepping until you can see the entire scene from far away. Notice how the details blur, how the weight lightens, how your breath deepens. Remind yourself, this is only part of the story, not the whole story. Because the truth is, pain feels infinite only when you are too close to it. The moment you expand distance, you discover that what once looked like a mountain is, from above, just a small hill. And in that perspective, you find the strength to keep walking forward. Mental gravity shift. Every thought you carry has weight. Some are light, like feathers, fleeting worries that drift in and drift out. Others are heavy, like stones, regrets, fears, and memories that drag you down every time you try to rise. Over the years, these stones accumulate, and suddenly your inner world feels like you're walking under the pull of a gravity too strong to bear. The mental gravity shift is a technique that teaches you to change that pull. It is the art of releasing the unnecessary weight and adjusting the gravity of your mind so that instead of being crushed, you feel light enough to move, breathe, and live again. Think of astronauts training in space. On Earth, gravity holds them firmly to the ground. Every step is bound by its pull, but in orbit, gravity loosens. Movements that once required force become effortless. They float, glide, and move with freedom. Your inner life is no different. When your thoughts are saturated with guilt, shame, or doubt, it feels like walking through mud. But when you shift mental gravity, suddenly the same challenges don't crush you anymore. They become obstacles you can move around with ease. Take Leo, for example. He wakes every morning with a heavy sense of failure. Years ago, he lost a business and the memory clings to him. It weighs on every choice, every dream. It whispers, "Don't try again. You'll only fall." To him, life feels unbearably heavy. One night, he practices the mental gravity shift. He closes his eyes and imagines himself standing under a sky full of stars. He pictures the weight of his past as stones strapped to his back. Slowly, he imagines stepping into a space with lighter gravity. The stones still exist, but their pull weakens. He begins to float slightly, the weight loosening, the burden softening. For the first time, he feels free enough to breathe deeply. That night, he sleeps without the crushing heaviness. This practice works because the brain responds to metaphor as if it were real. When you visualize weight being lifted, when you imagine the force of gravity changing, your body responds with relief. Muscles unclench, breath deepens, the nervous system calms. It is not fantasy, it is psychology in action. There are many ways to practice mental gravity shift. Visualization is powerful. Picture your heaviest thoughts as objects strapped to you, then imagine gravity loosening until they no longer crush you. Journaling can also help. List the burdens you feel, then reframe them as smaller, lighter truths. Some people even use body movement, lying down and imagining the floor releasing its pull, as though you are floating in space, free from the weight of your thoughts. At first, the heaviness will return quickly. Old burdens cling tightly. But with practice, the shift becomes easier. Each time you release a little weight, you remind your mind and body that you are not chained to the ground of your past. Slowly, what once felt like a mountain of heaviness becomes a collection of pebbles you can carry with grace. The deeper truth of this technique is that much of the heaviness we feel isn't from reality itself, but from the meaning we've attached to it. Say failure can weigh a ton if you decide it defines you. The same failure can weigh almost nothing if you see it as one lesson among many. The gravity is not in the event, it is in the story you tell yourself. And that story can always shift. So tonight, if you feel weighed down, try this. Close your eyes. Picture the stones of your burdens strapped to you. Feel their heaviness. Then imagine stepping into a space where gravity is lighter. Watch the stones loosen, their pull weakening, your body beginning to rise. Breathe in that lightness. Tell yourself, I am not my weight. I am the one who chooses how much of it I carry. Because the truth is, you cannot always control what enters your life, but you can control the gravity it holds over you. And when you learn the mental gravity shift, you discover that freedom isn't about escaping your burdens. It's about carrying them in a space where they no longer break you. Ego boundary collapse. We live inside invisible walls. These walls are not made of stone or steel, but of identity, the stories we tell ourselves about who we are, what we can do, and how others must see us. This is the ego, a boundary that separates me from you, mine from yours, possible from impossible. At first, the ego seems necessary. It gives us shape, a sense of self. But over time, these boundaries grow rigid. They limit us. They trap us inside labels, smart or stupid, worthy or unworthy, strong or weak. The ego boundary collapse is the practice of dissolving these walls. It is not about losing yourself, but about realizing that the borders of self are illusions, and when they fall, a wider, freer reality opens before you. Think of a drop of water falling into the ocean. At first, it is separate, contained by its own surface tension, but the moment it hits the sea, the boundary collapses. The drop is no longer just itself. It is the ocean. The ego works the same way. You walk through life believing you are just this one small drop. Your name, your face, your past, your achievements, your failures. But when the boundaries of ego collapse, you realize you are part of something larger, connected to others, to the world, even to the universe itself. Take Noah, for example. He has always seen himself as a failure. That label defines his choices, shrinking his world. Every mistake reinforces the boundary. This is who I am, someone who fails. One day he practices ego boundary collapse. He closes his eyes and imagines the label failure written across a glass wall in front of him. Slowly he breathes and pictures cracks forming in the glass. With each exhale, the wall crumbles until nothing remains. On the other side, there is no label, no rigid self, just openness, possibility, and silence. For the first time, he realizes he is not his past, not his story, not his ego. He is something greater. This works because the ego is a mental construct. It is a story of separation. When you dissolve it, even for a moment, you experience freedom, a sense of expansion, where the limits of "I am only this" disappear. Psychologists call this self-transcendence, and spiritual traditions have spoken of it for centuries. It is the moment where the prison of identity falls, and you see yourself not as a small character in one story, but as part of the vastness of life itself. There are many ways to practice ego boundary collapse. Some people use meditation, sitting quietly and observing thoughts until they realize the thinker is not the thoughts. Others use visualization, picturing their identity as a mask they gently set down, discovering the face beneath it. Some use empathy, imagining life through the eyes of others, realizing that the separation between me and them is thinner than it seems. Even deep creativity can trigger collapse. When an artist loses themselves in painting or music, the ego dissolves, and only the flow remains. At first, collapsing the ego feels unsettling. Without boundaries, who am I? Without labels, what do I become? But slowly, you realize that losing the rigid self is not death. It is liberation. You don't vanish. You expand. You become not less, but more. The walls that once confined you crumble, and suddenly the world feels larger, more open, more alive. The deeper truth of ego boundary collapse is that identity is both real and unreal. It serves a purpose, helping you navigate life, but it is not the ultimate truth. The moment you realize you are not your labels, not your failures, not even your successes, you gain power. You are no longer trapped inside definitions. You are free to step beyond them. So tonight, if you feel confined by who you think you are, try this. Close your eyes. Picture the walls of your ego, the names, the roles, the stories written across them. Breathe deeply, and with each exhale, see cracks forming. Watch the walls crumble piece by piece. Step through the ruins into the open field beyond. In that openness, whisper to yourself, I am more than my story. I am more than my ego. Because the truth is, you were never just the drop. You were always the ocean, pretending to be small, and when the ego boundary collapses, you finally remember what you've been all along. Infinite corridor illusion. Have you ever walked down a hallway lined with mirrors where every reflection seemed to stretch endlessly into the distance? That is the infinite corridor illusion, not in architecture, but in the mind. It is what happens when thoughts loop endlessly, reflecting back and forth, creating the sense of an unending tunnel you cannot escape. Anxiety, regret, overthinking, they all thrive inside this illusion. The corridor looks infinite because the mind keeps building doors that lead only to more doors, mirrors that reflect only more mirrors. But the truth is, the corridor is not endless. It only seems that way because you have forgotten that you can turn, step aside, or even walk through the mirror itself. Think of overthinking. You worry about something that might happen tomorrow, then you worry about worrying. Then you worry about whether your worry will ruin tomorrow. Each thought reflects into the next, creating a corridor that stretches as far as you can see. The illusion is not the thought itself, but the belief that the corridor must be walked to its end. In reality, the corridor is a trap of perspective, and once you recognize it, you can step out of it instantly. Take Adrian as an example. He made a mistake at work and now he's replaying it endlessly. What if my boss thinks less of me? What if I get fired? What if I can't pay my bills? Each what if creates another door in the corridor. Adrian keeps walking, deeper and deeper until the tunnel feels infinite, but then he learns the infinite corridor illusion. He closes his eyes and imagines himself standing in that hallway of mirrors. He sees his anxious reflections stretching, without end. Instead of continuing forward, he stops. He turns his head sideways and notices a door in the wall that wasn't visible before. He steps through it. The corridor vanishes. The illusion breaks. For the first time, his thoughts quiet. This technique works because the brain confuses repetition with truth. When a thought loops endlessly, it feels heavier, more real, more urgent. But the repetition doesn't mean the thought is true. It only means the corridor is reflecting itself. By visualizing the illusion as an endless hallway and then deliberately breaking the pattern, stepping sideways, turning around, pausing instead of moving forward, you remind your subconscious that there is always another way out. There are many ways to practice breaking the infinite corridor illusion. Visualization is powerful. Picture yourself standing in a mirrored hallway, then smash a mirror, step through a wall, or open a hidden door. Breath can work too. Inhale deeply, hold, and imagine the corridor freezing. Exhale, and picture yourself stepping out into an open field. Some people use mantras, repeating "this is only a thought, not the truth," until the corridor loses its power. Others use body anchors, snapping a rubber band on their wrist or touching their chest to interrupt the loop. The point is not to destroy the corridor, but to remember it is an illusion. At first, your mind will try to pull you back in. The reflections are seductive, each one whispering, "Walk a little further, the answer is just ahead." But with practice, you learn the truth. There is no final door at the end of the corridor. The only way out is sideways. The only way out is breaking the illusion. The deeper truth of this practice is that the infinite corridor is not about thoughts themselves. It is about identification. When you believe every reflection is you, you keep chasing them endlessly. When you realize they are just projections, the mirrors lose their power. You remember, I am the one walking, not the corridor itself. So tonight, if your mind feels stuck in endless loops, try this. Close your eyes. Picture the mirrored corridor stretching before you. See your worries reflected into infinity. Then stop walking. Turn sideways. Step through the wall. Notice the silence that follows when the mirrors disappear. And remind yourself, the corridor was never infinite. It was only an illusion. Because the truth is, your thoughts can trap you only if you keep walking their endless halls. The moment you turn aside, the walls dissolve, and you step into freedom. That is the power of breaking the infinite corridor illusion, escaping not by finishing the tunnel, but by realizing it never truly existed. Reverse perspective thinking. The human mind has a habit of locking itself into one angle. You see a problem, a situation, or even yourself from a single perspective, and that perspective feels like the only truth. But what if the angle is wrong? What if the very way you are looking at it is the reason it feels so impossible? Reverse perspective thinking is the practice of flipping the angle, not looking at things from the usual direction, but from the opposite one. It is the art of asking, what if the meaning I've given this is upside down? Because sometimes the key to freedom is not finding a new solution, but daring to see the old problem in reverse. Imagine a painting in a gallery. From one side, it looks chaotic, distorted, almost meaningless. But then you walk to the other side of the room and suddenly, the painting shifts, shapes align, patterns emerge. What was once confusing now makes sense. Life works in the same way. Most suffering comes not from events themselves, but from the perspective through which we view them. Reverse perspective thinking reminds you that what feels like chaos might be clarity when seen differently. Take Sarah as an example. She was rejected from a job she desperately wanted. Her first perspective is simple. This means I'm not good enough. From this angle, rejection is proof of her inadequacy. But then she practices reverse perspective thinking. She asks herself, what if rejection isn't a punishment but protection? What if this wasn't my door, and being turned away means the right door is still waiting? Instantly, her perspective shifts. The same event, rejection, transforms from shame into redirection. Nothing outside her changed, only her angle did. This practice works because the brain tends to fixate. It latches onto one interpretation and repeats it until it feels absolute. Reverse perspective. Thinking interrupts this fixation. By deliberately flipping the meaning, asking what the opposite could be, you create space for possibility. It doesn't mean you lie to yourself. It means you remind yourself that no perspective is final, and that truth often depends on where you stand. There are many ways to use this technique. One is to ask direct reversals. If you think, I failed, reverse it into, I learned. If you believe, they hurt me because I'm weak, reverse it into, they hurt me because I was strong enough to care. Another way is to change the timeline. Instead of asking, why did this happen to me? Ask, how will this look to me 5 years from now? Some people even flip roles, imagining the same situation from the perspective of the other person, realizing the story might be different than their assumptions. At first, your mind will resist. The original perspective feels safe, even if it's painful. The ego clings to its version of the story because it fears losing control, but with practice, you learn that truth is rarely one-sided. The same moment can carry multiple meanings, and often the perspective that hurts the most is not the only one available. The deeper truth of reverse perspective thinking is that perception shapes reality. The world is not simply what happens, it is what you tell yourself about what happens. When you dare to flip the frame, you shift not only the story, but the power it holds over you. Pain becomes growth, loss becomes space, endings become beginnings. So tonight, if you are trapped in a thought that feels unbearable, try this. Take the belief and flip it. Ask yourself, what if the opposite is true? What if I've been standing on the wrong side of the painting? Sit with that new angle, even if it feels strange. Let your mind stretch, and notice how the same situation begins to feel different, lighter, less final. Because the truth is, reality is not a single perspective, it is a prism, and every angle reveals a different light. Reverse perspective. Thinking gives you the courage to turn the prism to see what else has always been there. And sometimes, the view from the opposite side is the one that finally sets you free. Shadow thought integration. Every mind has shadows, thoughts we push away, emotions we bury, truths we deny. They are the impulses we don't want to admit, the anger we pretend we don't feel, the desires we label as wrong, the fears we hide from even ourselves. Most people spend their entire lives running from these shadows, building walls of distraction, denial, or false positivity to avoid facing them. But the truth is, what you resist does not disappear, it grows stronger. The shadow thought integration is the practice of turning toward these hidden parts, bringing them into the light, and merging them into the whole of who you are. because freedom does not come from rejecting your shadows, but from embracing them until they no longer control you. Think of the human psyche like a house. The rooms you live in are your conscious thoughts, clean, decorated, presentable. But in the basement, behind locked doors, live all the parts of you you'd rather forget: shame, jealousy, rage, guilt, unhealed wounds. You keep the basement door closed, hoping that if you never open it, those parts will vanish. Yet every so often, the shadows crawl upstairs. In moments of anger you can't explain. In anxiety that strikes without reason. In self-sabotage that ruins what you've worked for. Integration means unlocking that basement, shining a light inside, and realizing that the monsters in the dark are not here to destroy you. They are parts of you waiting to be understood. Take Daniel, for example. He always tells himself he is calm, reasonable, and kind. But whenever he feels ignored, he lashes out with sudden bursts of rage. He hates this side of himself, so he suppresses it even more, ashamed of its presence. But when he practices shadow thought integration, he sits down with his anger instead of running from it. He asks, "What are you trying to tell me?" Slowly the shadow reveals itself. His rage is not cruelty, but a child inside him terrified of being unseen. By listening, he integrates the shadow. He doesn't become controlled by anger. Instead, anger transforms into clarity, guiding him to speak his needs without violence. This practice works because suppression is fuel. Whatever you resist builds pressure until it explodes. But when you face a shadow with curiosity, the pressure dissolves. The thought stops being an enemy and becomes a messenger. You realize that your darkest impulses often carry wisdom, unmet needs, forgotten pain, or hidden strengths disguised as flaws. There are many ways to practice shadow thought integration. Journaling is powerful. Write down the thoughts you're ashamed of, then respond to them as if they were voices asking for help. Visualization works too. Imagine sitting in a room with your shadow self, letting it speak without judgment. Some people even give their shadows a name or a face, treating them like neglected children to be cared for instead of enemies to be destroyed. The key is compassion. Shadows do not dissolve under hatred, but under understanding. At first, this practice feels uncomfortable. You will want to turn away. You will tell yourself, "This isn't me, I shouldn't think this way, I shouldn't feel this." But the deeper truth is, your shadow thoughts are you, not the whole of you, but a part that longs to be acknowledged. When you deny them, you fracture yourself. When you integrate them, you become whole. The deeper truth of shadow thought integration is that light is meaningless without darkness. Your strength exists alongside your weakness. Your kindness grows deeper when you understand your cruelty. Your peace becomes more powerful when you acknowledge your rage. Integration doesn't make you perfect, it makes you real. And realness is where freedom lives. So tonight, if a dark thought rises, envy, anger, fear, guilt, don't push it away. Instead, pause, breathe. Imagine sitting across from it and ask, "What are you here to teach me?" Listen to the answer, not with judgment, but with compassion. Then remind yourself, "I am not broken, I am whole. My shadows belong to me and I belong to them." Because the truth is, you are not only the light in your life, you are the light and the shadow, the seen and the unseen. And when you stop fighting the darkness inside you, it no longer controls you. It becomes fuel for your growth. That is the power of shadow thought integration, turning your hidden enemy into your greatest ally. Imagined sound barrier. Silence is never truly silent. Even in the quietest room, your mind hums with echoes, the chatter of thoughts, the replay of conversations, the endless narration of your inner voice. Most people don't realize how much of their suffering comes not from the world around them, but from the noise within. The imagined sound barrier is a technique that helps you create a boundary, an invisible wall where the inner noise stops, leaving you in a space of pure stillness. It's not about silencing the mind forever, but about building a sanctuary where the noise cannot reach you. Think of a pilot breaking through the sound barrier. At first, the air resists. The pressure builds, turbulence shakes the aircraft, and it feels impossible to push through. But the moment the barrier is crossed, everything changes. The turbulence disappears, replaced by a strange, weightless calm. Your inner life works the same way. As long as you remain inside the turbulence of thoughts, it feels endless. But when you imagine breaking through the sound barrier of your mind, you discover a silence on the other side that has always been waiting for you. Take Alina, for example. She suffers from overthinking. Every mistake, every choice, every word she speaks echoes back at her in endless mental noise. One night, she tries the imagined sound barrier. She closes her eyes and imagines her thoughts as sound waves bouncing inside a glass dome. The noise is overwhelming, bouncing back louder each time. Then she pictures herself running forward, faster and faster, until she smashes through the dome like an aircraft, breaking the sound barrier. Suddenly the noise stops. Around her is vast, empty silence, not frightening but liberating. She breathes deeper than she has in months. For the first time, she feels peace, not because her problems are solved, but because the noise has no power in her sanctuary. This practice works because the brain responds to imagery as if it were reality. When you create a mental barrier and break through it, your nervous system reacts with relief. Heart rate slows, muscles relax, and the endless chatter loses intensity. You remind your subconscious that noise is not absolute. It can be contained, distanced, and left behind. There are many ways to practice imagined sound barrier. Visualization is the most direct. Imagine yourself running, flying, or even swimming until you break through a shimmering wall where sound cannot follow. Some people use meditation, sitting still, picturing thoughts as sounds that bounce against an invisible shield until they fade. Others create rituals, playing a single sound, like a bell, then imagining silence expanding after the echo dies. The key is consistency. The more often you imagine the barrier, the easier it becomes to step into that quiet space. At first, the noise will try to break through. Old worries will pound against the wall, demanding attention. But with practice, the barrier strengthens. You learn to step beyond the turbulence more quickly, and each time you do, you train your mind that silence is not something to be chased. It is always available, waiting just beyond the sound. The deeper truth of this technique is that silence is not the absence of thought, but the space in which thought exists. Thoughts are like birds flying in the sky. The sky does not resist them, but it also does not need them to be free. The imagined sound barrier reminds you that you are not the noise. You are the space beyond it. So tonight, if your mind feels too loud, try this. Close your eyes, hear the noise, feel the turbulence. Then imagine yourself breaking through, like a jet crossing the sound barrier. On the other side, there is stillness. Breathe into that space. Sit in the silence. Let it remind you, I am not the noise. I am the stillness beyond it. Because the truth is, no matter how loud your mind becomes, there is always a deeper quiet beneath it. And when you learn to break through the imagined sound barrier, you stop being a prisoner of the noise and rediscover the silence that has always been yours. False awakening simulation. There is a strange experience that some dreamers know well. You wake up, or at least you think you do. You rise from your bed, move through your morning, maybe even start your day. But then something feels off. A detail doesn't make sense, a sound, a clock, a mirror. Then the realization strikes, you never woke up at all. You are still asleep, trapped inside a dream that is imitating reality. This is called a false awakening, and while most people know it only as a nighttime phenomenon, in truth, it reflects something far deeper about the way we live our lives. The uncomfortable reality is that most people are caught in a false awakening every single day. They believe they are awake simply because their eyes are open. They believe they are conscious because their bodies are moving. But inside, their minds are running on patterns, replaying habits, repeating loops. They are not awake to themselves. They are not awake to the present moment. They are only dreaming their lives, calling it reality. The false awakening simulation is a method that forces you to stop and question, am I truly awake right now? Or am I only dreaming that I am awake? And the moment you dare to ask that question, something shifts. The illusion cracks and the possibility of real awareness begins. Think of your daily routine. You wake to an alarm, scroll through your phone, eat the same breakfast, drive the same roads, talk in the same ways. The hours blur together. Days become indistinguishable. Time moves, but awareness does not. This is life inside a dream, repetition mistaken for reality. But the act of questioning, the act of pausing and asking, "Am I awake?" disrupts the pattern. It is like flicking a light on inside a darkened room, revealing details you didn't notice before. Suddenly, the ordinary becomes extraordinary. The background becomes vivid. Life breathes again. Take Elias, for example. He spent years moving through life like a ghost. He worked, ate, slept, and repeated. He laughed when expected, smiled when appropriate, but inside he felt nothing. Then one night he experienced a false awakening in a dream. He woke, brushed his teeth, poured his coffee, walked outside, and then saw that the sky was the wrong color. He blinked, and suddenly he was back in bed, realizing it had all been a dream. That moment haunted him. He began asking himself during the day, "What if I'm still dreaming?" The question didn't make the world collapse. Instead, it made it vivid. The trees outside his window looked alive again. The rhythm of his breath felt real. The conversations he had carried weight. He wasn't sleepwalking anymore. He was finally awake. This practice works because the mind is addicted to autopilot. Neuroscience shows that a huge percentage of our daily actions are unconscious. Habits formed years ago that we repeat without thought. You don't decide how to brush your teeth. Your body just does it. You don't decide how to respond to certain triggers. You react automatically. The false awakening simulation breaks this trance. By planting doubt in the illusion of wakefulness, you shock the system back into awareness. It's not about paranoia, it's about presence. There are many ways to practice this. One method is to set reminders throughout the day. Each time you hear a notification or see the time, stop and ask, "Am I awake right now?" Another method is sensory awakening. Pause and name 5 things you can see, 4 you can feel, 3 you can hear, 2 you can smell, 1 you can taste. This grounds you, pulling you from the dream into raw experience. Some use reflection, writing down events of the day and asking, "Was I present when this happened, or was I only acting out habit?" The more often you do this, the thinner the dream becomes, until cracks appear in the illusion of autopilot living. At first, this simulation feels strange. The world might even feel unreal, as though you are moving through a fragile dream. But that is the point, because in truth, much of what you experience daily is unreal. It is filtered, colored, distorted by thought patterns, assumptions, and old stories. To see reality clearly, you must first see through the false awakening. You must admit, "Perhaps I have not been awake at all." The deeper truth of this practice is that real awakening is not a dramatic event. It is not a single explosion of enlightenment that changes everything forever. Real awakening happens in small moments, when you suddenly notice your breath, when you actually taste your food instead of devouring it, when you look into someone's eyes and truly see them, not the memory of them. Each moment of awareness is like tearing through another layer of the false dream. So tomorrow, when you rise from bed, pause before you reach for your phone. Look at your hands, look at the room. Ask yourself, "Am I awake or am I still dreaming?" Do the same when you walk, when you work, when you sit in silence. Let the question echo inside you, and notice how everything sharpens in response. The world you thought you knew begins to feel alive again. Because the truth is, most people never wake up. They only dream that they do, mistaking habit for reality. But if you dare to question, if you dare to pierce the false awakening, you might experience something rare, true presence. The kind of awareness that makes you realize you are not just living, you are awake for the very first time.